Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's the Full Melt Show.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
This is the Full Melt.
Give me a break. The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
All right. We've juiced up the PetPain.com studios today for another full edition live of the Full Melt Show. Stand by. I got to tell you that I've been working hard and wide today. I'm kind of tracking down the details that we told you about yesterday at the Michigan House. Michigan House passing a package of bills yesterday. And this package of bills was meant to, well, at least two of the three bills in the package were meant to address the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act by changing it, modifying it, editing it. Not very many people happy with those changes. You see, the reason that nobody's happy, it seems, with those changes is because those changes started out to be caregiver patient-centric changes. Changes modifying that program and bolstering that program, backing that program up so that, number one, if you had too much cannabis in your grow, you could transfer it to one of these dispensaries and not get charged for, a drug, violation. So you could transfer it to them. You could sell it to them at cost, and they could buy it from you, and there would be no illegal narcotic sale going on. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, and also to establish some rules and regulations around these dispensaries, because they exist already. They're already here. They're up in many places across the state. Now, the second thing would be this issue that the courts had ruled that cannabis extracts in Michigan were not part of the original Michigan Medical Marijuana Act because they were not considered under the act, under the language and terms of the act, as usable marijuana. That phrase, usable marijuana, is important because usable marijuana means the dried leaves and flowers of the marijuana plant. But now, HB 4210, Michigan House Bill 4210, changes that to also allow for cannabis extract in various forms, a gaseous form, a liquid form. And I guess we'll have to ask our guest coming up on the program here today, Attorney Denise Pollicella from Cannabis Attorneys of Mid-Michigan. She's located out here in Livingston County, adjacent to Oakland County in the state, and has been working hard at helping to craft much of this language. She's been in on the work groups with the MPRA and others, Cannabis Patients United. There's a whole bunch of alphabet soup that goes into this recipe. And so Denise has been working on this as, I guess, part of the MCDA, the Michigan Cannabis Development Association. She's their attorney. And the Michigan Cannabis Development Association, I think, is perhaps, I would think, to some degree at odds with the rest of the patient-caregiver community, because right now much of the patient-caregiver community is pissed off at this language. They're not happy about it at all, and there are reasons behind it. Now, there may be reasons behind it that are factual, and there may be reasons behind it that are fallaciously based. In other words, they're false. The reason that you're angry about this might not be correct anger. You might be mistaken about what this means. That's my impression right now. We'll see if it holds true. So let me get through with the rest of this package of bills, because I told you 4209 establishes dispensaries, and it was meant to originally just create safe harbor for the existing dispensaries here. These existing dispensaries, the money they generate, and the political clout they have with all of the people that happen to be, in their clientele, have been working very hard to craft language and legislation at the Michigan legislative level working with all these legislators, House Republicans and Democrats, Senate Republicans and Democrats, the whole kit and caboodle for years now. And we've been, basically raising money for Mike Calton, who's the principal sponsor behind House Bill 4209. That being said, the language that we had been working on diligently for 3 years in this process and raising money all the way, by the way. There were two political processes here. The first bill was introduced, I forget the number of the bill, but it was introduced a few years ago. And that bill only had about a year of life left to it because it was introduced mid-session. The legislative sessions here are 2 years in length. And when you end at the end of the legislative session, if your bill hasn't been passed, it gets wiped clean. The next legislative session starts anew and you got to introduce it again. So it went through that process once, and we raised money for him during that process, the initial introduction of the bill. We raised money for Calton, a lot of money for Calton. A lot of fundraisers went on for Calton at that point in time. These are Democrats raising money for Republicans in general terms. Generally speaking, that's what's going on here with Calton. Then that session ends. He doesn't get any recognition from his Republican colleagues. It was an exercise in educating some of them. So the next session comes along. We've got 2 years going on there. And that session ended December of 2014. So 2013 and 2014, that 2 years, was the next introduction of this bill, and it was known then as the local option bill. Now, the local option bill didn't see the light of day either. Boy, it got introduced. It made all the progress necessary to raise additional funds. It was introduced. It had co-sponsors. It went through the subcommittee hearings with flying colors, by the way, and then it sat there. And it sat there. And it sat there. And finally, at the very last hour of the very last legislative day in December of 2014, right after last Christmas, they had a few days in the session they had scheduled, and they called this bill, or they're getting ready to call the bill, and word comes from on high that Rep. Calton has pulled his bill. Not only that, the lady that was sponsoring the other bill, which is now 4210, it may have had a different number at that time, also the oil bill, the medibles bill, the bill that I talked about, extracts, that bill was also pulled by its sponsor. Now, they had done all the counting on these votes earlier in the day, and they had the support for this, or they wouldn't have even brought it this far. The problem was that at some point in the game, those bills got yanked. They claim that it was the Sheriff's Association and Mike Bouchard and Bill Schuette that jumped in on this and said, no, you got to pull these bills. We want to help you get them passed, but we got to modify them. Please pull the bills. Or, and again, I think there were some actual threats made about people's political careers if they let these bills pass. I'm going to save the corruption word for later because I think there's an awful lot of corruption. There's a lot of hanky-panky going inside the government that is out coloring outside the lines. And I would say that in this instance, most of the coloring has been outside the lines and not in. That being said, both those bills got yanked. The wind was let out of the cannabis community. We were in disbelief that they had done this. We were all waiting with bated breath to see this get done. I believe the governor was ready to sign these bills. It didn't happen. And to get my nicotine on before we get into this next segment, because, oh, boy. Got a lot of territory to cover here, don't we? A lot of turf. So then this other bill in the package springs up, and I'll tell you, it's sprung up with lightning fastness, lightning quickness. It was introduced, bingo bango, went through its little legislative hurdles and went to committee and then right back in with this other set of bills, this other 2-bill package, now 3-bill package. 4827, I believe is the bill number, is introduced by Mr. Kesto. Mr. Kesto insisting that seed-to-sale tracking for the medical marijuana community is a must. And this is, so what they've done is, I believe, if it was my estimation, if you're going to ask me what I think happened here, I think the Michigan Cannabis Development Association, in conjunction with some of the other people with the Michigan, what is it, the MCC? Remember they had a ballot initiative out? They pulled that in anticipation of something going through with this. They're bankrupt now. They don't have any more money, and they're not collecting signatures anymore. They're not going to be on the ballot. The only one making its way to the ballot currently, still collecting signatures, still has money, and is still raising money, is Michigan Legalize, MI Legalize. Now, MI Legalize, they see the writing on the wall with this, and I think these other guys, including, there's another group in the background, the Michigan, Michigan Responsibility Council, the MRC. They were getting ready to put a ballot initiative up to it, and in fact, they had threatened to do so if the legislature didn't take action. And I think what happened here is the Michigan Cannabis Development Association, in conjunction with the MCC, the Michigan Cannabis Coalition, and then the MRC, the Michigan Responsibility Council. And I think, finally, the MPRA, the National Patient Rights Association, had some angle into this, but it wasn't very much, it seems to me. I wasn't in these meetings, but that is the chronological history of what happened here. And I think they hijacked these bills. They've been gutted for big business, not for the little guys, the guys that are doing patient caregivers. They've been cut out of this. They're just going to be left alone in their own little place. You still got no place to sell your overages to. You better get rid of that. If you still got it, you better destroy it. Some possible leakage into the black market opportunity there because they've allowed no legitimate pathway for anything over. They've also, with 4210, said that 7 grams of, I believe, what they call gaseous form of cannabis. This is the oil extract, I believe they're talking about. 7 grams of oil extract would be equal to 1 ounce of cannabis, so that you can stay within your 2.5 ounce limit per patient if you're a caregiver, and for yourself if you're a patient, because 2.5 ounces is the maximum. Well, if you got 7 grams and 1.5 ounces, that's still 2.5 ounces. You got more than that. If you have 7 grams of wax and you got an ounce and a half of weed, and maybe a doobie, now you're over. You're over your limit. You don't get this Section 4 protection anymore. They could arrest and prosecute you, and you might have to go all the way to paying an attorney and, probation or terms, not even probation, terms of, when you get bail, bond. You got bond conditions, which are the same terms as probation, basically. You still got to piss in a cup. You still got to, be accountable. They've been gutted and hijacked, in my opinion. These are my words, nobody else's, but I want to put the other side of that coin on the air here for the rest of the entire hour. And then at the end of the hour, we're going to join Planet Green Trees as they go on the air and consume more information about this topic. A special live 3-hour broadcast tonight on The Full Melt Show. Don't you go away.
You're getting The Full Melt.
Got something to hide? Cannalock offers discreet and effective storage solutions that destroy odor, so nobody knows. Cannalock is a patented charcoal-activated bag that discreetly stores your marijuana. Cannalock is made from the same material as military chemical warfare suits. Get yours at Cannalock.com. Visit Cannalock.com to learn more about no-smell technology.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. Introducing Sacred Elements, a place for natural and alternative healing for the mind, body, and soul. Sacred Elements. It's one place, all solutions.
Registered, licensed, certified, ordained.
Sacred Elements.
Massage, hypnosis, Reiki.
Sacred Elements.
Raindrop, aroma and color therapy, body detox, ministry, life coaching, weight and nutrition counseling.
Sacred Elements. Next to the Sweet Leaf, 400 South Door Highway, Flint.
11 to 7 daily, closed Sunday.
Call 810-259-2570.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road. Take care when passing. and always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
Don't miss the first ever cannabis competition this year as the prize contest moves from Amsterdam to Jamaica. That's right, it's all Jamaican fun now with the Big Cup competition in Negril this November. Get your best travel accommodations now at JamaicaPot.com. Pack your beach bong and swimsuit and party down at the warm sandy beaches of Negril, Jamaica for the first ever big cannabis event this year. Do it in style or come have fun on a budget. Best travel prices now at JamaicaPot.com. That's JamaicaPot.com.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade. You got this.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
I'm gonna need someone to help me.
So if you got a question or a comment about this issue of these House bills, this package of House bills, you can call now, again, the toll-free number, 844-420-TALK, 844-420-8255. I think those lines are all back to hook. I mean, I've spent the entire afternoon working on getting those reconfigured with voice over IP, so wow, what a pain in the butt that was. But I want to welcome to the program Denise Pollicella from Cannabis Attorneys of Mid-Michigan. Welcome to the program, Denise.
Hi, Steve. Thank you, and congratulations on getting the phone lines working. I know that was a task.
It was, and you're talking on one of those voice over IP lines right now. There's a total of 7 of them. It's really crazy business trying to get all that stuff configured. You know, I can tell you that this is how crazy it is. There's actually Bluetooth connectors, 7 of them. For all of those lines, wow. It's just really weird. In any event, we've been talking about this package of bills, and it seems that you've had some hand in helping to craft them. Yes? Could you tell us about that?
Some hand. I'm not going to take credit for this entire mess. Just 4209 is 61 pages now. Way back, and for those of you who've known me a long time, I've been pushing for a regulated system of some sort for a long time. I wanted it to be loosely based on our alcoholic beverage regulatory system for 2 reasons. One, that particular system is very familiar to the state of Michigan, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And 2, it's extremely palatable to legislators because it's familiar to them. And that idea has sort of been batted around for a little bit when House Bill 4271, which was the former incarnation of what has now become 4209, failed last year. The group that I work with and our lobbyist put together a proposal, and that at the same time, unbeknownst to us at the time, the governor's office was working on something similar, and it all kind of ended up coming together under Representative Colton's bill, and it's more or less what you see now. It's been played with a lot. We had a fairly comprehensive bill package, and it's gone through numerous amendments, but as you're probably aware, there are, of course, the Republican legislative leadership in both House and Senate. Then we have a bunch of different stakeholders, in addition to all of the, marijuana advocacy groups out there. Right. You also have the Michigan Municipal League. You have the Communities Association, the townships, and then, of course, all of the law enforcement groups.
Well, see, here's
I think it's.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I got to put a mental note on law enforcement groups. So I want to go back to that. Go ahead and finish. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. Well, I think why I ended with law enforcement, of course, is because it's very widely known and understood that law enforcement pretty much killed 4271 last time.
Right.
So I think our first target in January of this year was law enforcement. We sat down and we said, okay, you get it. What do you want? And we knew that in order to get anything passed in the near future with the legislature that we have, which I think we can all agree is fairly conservative, and, the law enforcement community having the concerns they have, and at the time, 2 years away from any potential, legalization,
right.
We wanted to get something going as soon as possible. So,
well, that makes sense.
I was tired. Yeah, and I'm just as tired as everybody else of reading the Supreme Court's decisions.
Right.
Well,
and there aren't many more to come. I think I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court is sick of this. So they're like, oh no, we're batting anything else back. Well, because
I think if anybody who read Justice Zara's opinion in Hartwick versus in the Hartwick and Tuttle case,
right,
gets that they're tired of this.
They actually chastised. It seems like there was some little chastisation there. But
they did.
So I think you're right. I think your pulse on the Supreme Court is correct according to my internet. My reading of the tea leaves there. I get the same vibe from them that we're kind of tired of kicking this around. We're kind of tired of having to clean up what that act is. And it seems like wasn't there some nine decisions in 7 years? That has to be some sort of record. I haven't personally looked it up, but it's thought to be a record. I'll bet it is, because I can't
substantive issue.
Can't think of any other issue that has been this popular at the Supreme Court layer.
Right.
So
right.
Having kind of taken in what you just said there, I wanted to go back to the law enforcement angle. I want to know from your point of view, because it seems like you would be aligned with me mentally thinking on this, but I just want to clarify it because I think this is an important distinction to make. It seems to me that we have a constitutional separation of powers for a reason. Would you say that, because I understand that law enforcement needs to be a partner in crafting legislation to some extent, because we need to know as legislators if indeed what we're legislating can be enforced, right?
And not enforced. I mean, we need to have something that, for whatever law enforcement is comfortable with, so that we can not have such aggressive enforcement.
But see, here's the problem that I have. I really don't give a crap what law enforcement is comfortable with. They're charged with maintaining the law they're enforcing the law. But so I really don't care about what they're comfortable with. I mean, it seems to me that law enforcement has stepped across the line of enforcing the laws and now wanting to help craft them for their own benefits.
I agree with you. You're not going to get an argument from me out of this one. I absolutely agree that they are over the line as far as enforcement. That is an entire different radio show, I think, regarding.
No, I'm talking about being partners in
policy and.
I was just referring to being.
No, to your point, I agree. But be that as it may, because law enforcement on the ground takes its direction from their leadership, and that leadership is going to tell them how to enforce the law. It's one of those things where if they're not included, and they all have lobbyists, as I'm pretty sure you're
that's
aware.
The problem that I have. Law enforcement shouldn't be lobbying or others. There's a separation of powers here. If law enforcement was able to craft the language of the law, then there would be no separation. That's what I'm saying. I think there's too much input from law enforcement about what social policy should be. They shouldn't be taking that place, my opinion.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not really thrilled with how reality works either. I think that there's too much. I think there's too much input from people with a lot of money. And
that's a problem
needs to
too.
Be fixed too. We've got the Citizens United issue in politics right now, where people can literally buy elections and buy votes, and I don't agree with that either. So I absolutely agree with you. It feels, and one of the reasons I think that I got into this particular area.
Right.
And into counseling and advocating for medical marijuana patients, caregivers, and businesses, is because I saw the complete failure of what is supposed to be a representative democracy.
Right.
And it just doesn't seem to be there anymore.
Well,
and it made me upset not only as a citizen but as a political science major. So
well, you've got the gerrymandered districts now, where instead of people picking their legislators. Right. Well, I'm just saying, you got the system now where legislators are picking their constituents rather than the constituents picking the legislators. I mean, we've turned politics on its head in this country.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed.
So it thwarts.
I would love to argue with you about something, but we can't find it yet. We'll get there. But no, I mean, I agree with you. I agree. I don't like it. It feels constantly like the system is rigged and, against, everyday constituents and citizens. And, the hardest part is that people give up on the political process because they get involved. And then they get exhausted and frustrated.
Right.
And they feel completely disenfranchised because they are, and then they give up. And
here's an example of it right here. We worked with those, the former internations of 4209 and 4210 for 3 years and got nowhere except raising money for Republicans trying to craft this for themselves.
Yeah.
It bothers me. It
should bother you.
It
bothers me too, but it's the game. It's one of those things where if you want to get anything done, and I think we got to the point where we're like, okay, we got to get this done. We, some of us, and I'm not just speaking for the MCDA. I mean, other groups said, okay, let's play the game. Let's just do it. And we've been playing the game because I feel very strongly that it's going to take less time to get this through than it is going to be to fight the game.
Right. Well, I think you're right about that.
I agree with you.
The problem that I have, though, is it seems like what we've ended up with now is the very people who fought against the patients and caregivers and the forward movement of marijuana policy in this state are the very ones now who are taking control of it for themselves and their own pocketbooks.
I don't know. I think time will tell on that one. I don't know if people who have fought. I think there are new players. I think people who have fought against it are now sort of getting their way. And also, I think that it's not necessarily that all people have fought against it. And just by way of example, let's take Senator Jones. I don't think he's anti-marijuana. He has been widely sort of, sanctioned for being anti-marijuana. I think he's just extraordinarily pro-public safety.
Well, he knows he's extraordinarily pro-sheriff, I think is what he is.
That too. So it's not necessarily that everyone that it has been fighting is now turning this into a personal profit thing. I think that there are numerous people who have not been involved at all in this prior to, say, this year, who are now jumping in, who see marijuana businesses as the next software, cell phone, personal computer,
it's the growing marketplace.
It literally, no pun intended.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because, look, people with money move the market. And honest to goodness, they get things done. And they get things done a lot faster. But at the same time, they tend to steamroll over the little guy. And that's what I try to prevent on a daily basis.
So I'm worried about the little guy. So first, we're getting ready to go to break.
Always worried about the little guy.
Right. Well, so we're getting ready to go to break. I think it's a good place to end our introduction to this topic. When we come back, because we've only got a couple minutes. So let me wrap it up. We'll wrap it up as we go into the commercial music here. I want to get into this business about what do these bills mean? Because I have a feeling, my reading on this, the way I see, I've been watching very carefully how politics move forward in this state, and when things get held up and when things get moved forward, this set of bills is now on the same track that Senate Bill 660 was a couple years ago. Am I correct? Would you agree with me in that assessment?
On the same track.
Yeah. In other words, it's going to be fast tracked. It's already got. I think it's already been. The votes have already been.
I hope so. I hope so. I have no problem with that because 660 wasn't very public.
No, it was all.
This, in some form or another, has been languishing, and it has been. It was introduced back in March. But I understand what you mean because I've been on the inside of it. I've seen it more. So I don't feel like it's being fast-tracked, but I sure hope to God it is so we can get...
Well, I mean, from the standpoint of this only recently had new Senate or new House hearings. The House the House hearings were only a few weeks ago. Now it's back to the floor for a vote. It's all three have passed with wide margins, better than the 2/3 they need to pass this and modify the Medical Marijuana Act. This will get sent to the Senate. I think go through the same motions. There may be some slight adjustment or substitutions offered there, and then this is going to get signed by the governor. I think this is a done deal.
I think it's a done deal too.
So that being the case, now that we've kind of encapsulated that idea, what does this set of bills mean in its current language form, without taking into account any modifications at the Senate level, or if you want to throw what might be coming in at the Senate level as you see it? Let's think about that. I really want to break it down to what this means to the patient caregiver community because they're so concerned about this right now.
Well, there's a difference. There is a difference between what it means to the patient community and what it means to the caregiver community. Okay? This package of bills will do three major things.
I happen to be both. I happen to be a patient and a caregiver. Right. So,
the patient side of you will be really happy.
Okay. I don't think so, because if the patient side of me has to go into a cannabis center that's being proposed in these bills, I don't want any part of it. In fact, I'm going to suggest boycotting that entire system.
Okay. Well, the nice thing about that part is that you're not required to go anywhere. If you're a patient and you want to cultivate and use your own medical marijuana, you can. This particular bill package is not going to touch the patient caregiver system as it exists in the law right now.
Wait a minute. There are some there are some definitions with regards to patient doctor-patient relationship. There's some changed terms and definitions in this language.
A little bit, but that's still up in the air. Like I said, I haven't been completely through all of them, and I'm paying more attention to the business side.
Right.
But it's not going to restrict the patient's ability to grow and use their own medicine.
All right. So then,
that's for sure.
All right. So
the package does four main things. Okay.
All right. So wrap it up in 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds, because we've got the music already.
Sure. It reprotects medibles, thank God. It does a seed-to-sale tracking system. It creates a legal commercial industry. Okay.
Yep.
And it doesn't touch the current patient caregiver system, but it will create fewer caregivers.
Yeah. You see that? That we got to talk about, too. All right. Stand by, Denise. Denise Pollicella from Cannabis Attorneys of Mid-Michigan, our guest all hour on the program.
You're getting the full melt.
Get ready, let's go. Hey, na, 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 na. Oh, hey, now, let's go. Yeah, I've got style. I'll make it wild. I'll change it up and switch it up so versatile. I'll be by myself and I'm gonna let everybody know.
We have the latest styles to mix it and mash it. So make it your own and bend the trend. JCPenney. When it fits, you feel it. During the JCPenney Back to School Hot Sale, get an extra $10 off when you spend $25 or more with coupon. Nike, Converse, Levi's, and other exclusions apply.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade, you got this.
Don't miss the first ever cannabis competition this year as the prize contest moved from Amsterdam to Jamaica. That's right, it's all Jamaican fun now with the Big Cup competition in Negril this November. Get your best travel accommodations now at JamaicaPot.com. Pack your beach bong and swimsuit and party down at the warm sandy beaches of Negril, Jamaica for the first ever big cannabis event this year. Do it in style or come have fun on a budget. Best travel prices now at JamaicaPot.com. That's JamaicaPot.com.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
We asked people to tell us something that happened in their past and something that might happen in their future. The good things were put on yellow magnets and the bad ones on blue. The results show the past was a pretty even mix of good and bad, yet the future was almost all good things. Now that you've seen the results of this experiment, what does it mean to you?
We all want to think about positive stuff.
Realistically, there will be downtimes.
It's great to think optimistically, but let's plan for whatever the future might bring.
Prudential, bring your challenges.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
Radio show.
It's really, really easy to find us on iTunes and subscribe to our iTunes playlist. Get a copy of every single show after we've done the live broadcast right in your iTunes folder. If you go to thefullmelt.com, and right there at the top of the page is the iTunes link. Click and subscribe. It's just that simple. So we're talking with Denise Pollicella, attorney for Cannabis Attorneys of Mid-Michigan, and most recently, as it relates to our subject tonight, for the Michigan Cannabis Development Association. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So we were talking before we went to break about the little guy. We were talking also about how this might make fewer caregivers. Let's talk about that a bit.
I think it will. Well, okay. This is the part where you're going to be mad again at the police. So when we
Nothing
were
new there.
Negotiating this, exactly. Okay, so this particular system is designed to create this bill package, and the original idea was designed to create a legal, regulated commercial marijuana industry. Okay, so that people could cultivate, process, infuse, extract, and sell marijuana at retail to consumers.
Right,
okay?
but
now,
wait a minute. I would like to agree with you on that with one modification. They already exist.
I'm sorry?
I said I'd like to agree with what you said, that this bill was supposed to do that. But I think that originally, in my estimation, the bill was designed to protect the patient care or these dispensaries that were already open. It was much of the money that came from these places that helped to get this done.
True. Now, let's remember, though, that the dispensaries that have been open this entire time, who have been selling marijuana to people who are not the patients of the caregiver in the dispensary, without getting too much into the, legal,
that whole business.
Technical
right.
part, okay, have been allowed to do so generally in contravention of state law.
Correct.
Great for them. More power to them. Ann Arbor, Detroit, Ypsi, Flint, Burton, we love you.
Lansing.
Thank you. Lansing, sure. Some parts of Traverse City, it's lovely, but I think that the system that existed or that has been created over the last several years, meaning caregivers cultivating marijuana and selling overages to dispensaries, was a non-starter for this bill. It would not be considered, and it was one of the things that was never in a million years going to get past not only law enforcement, but the bill co-sponsors, Representative Custo, House Judiciary, and they simply weren't going to do that. It was originally contemplated because I think what we were trying to do was simply legalize a system that was in place.
Right.
And then the idea was trying to put together a bill package or a set of bills that would create a legal, regulated industry without amending the Medical Marijuana Act. And frankly, very early on, we kind of gave up on that because we didn't even want to have to argue about whether or not it was an amendment.
Right.
And we kept getting a little bit close. So we thought, you know what? Screw it. We're going to write the bill we need to write, and then we're going to go for the supermajority. But frankly, the system of the caregivers selling overages to dispensaries was not palatable to the people that have to be approving this. Mainly law enforcement and the Republican leadership.
Because
and,
why? Because wait.
Whether that's a good idea or not.
Well, no. To me, it's like the question is why would they argue about that? What's the difference between that?
Argument. There was really no argument. That was a non-starter. Meaning, if that's your idea, come to us for something else. Our original proposal, just so you know, because not a lot of people were in that room. Our original proposal was, okay, we're going to create a system, but as a compromise, let's allow caregivers, private caregivers, to sell a certain set amount of marijuana to a commercial cultivator or to a processor after it's tested a month to sort of relieve the pressure of any potential black market, to allow them to continue to do this. And the answer was no way. And also remember that we have gotten the Republican Senate and the Senate leadership to come very far our way, and this was simply a non-starter, and that was it. So what the current law is, and the current proposed law, and what will go forward is, if you want to participate, if you want to be a caregiver, and be a caregiver for yourself and your 5 patients, you continue to do so. That will not be touched. If you want to do this for profit, if you want to participate in the legal, regulated, commercial industry of marijuana in Michigan.
No, wait, isn't it medical marijuana? It's medical marijuana, isn't it? There's nothing in these bills that's...
marijuana.
We're not talking anything about retail cannabis in any of these bills. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Although I think it's very clear that these bills were meant to be flexible.
Okay.
This system will very easily translate into a legal, regulated, a legal recreational system if that ever becomes a thing, and
right.
Hopefully it will. But I mean, I think that the eye is on making this a completely legal, regulated system at some point. Maybe a bifurcated system like Colorado. I don't know. I think that what we're frankly worried about the most is the patient. Legal recreational marijuana is going to be there, or recreational marijuana, rather, is going to be there regardless. Everyone's main concern this past several years has been getting safe marijuana to patients.
Well, we've had no problem. I think we've had no problem getting safe marijuana to patients. The problem we've had is not getting them arrested along the way.
You know what? And that's where I guess I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think that getting safe marijuana to a few patients has been successful. But the safe part has relied on a completely unregulated industry, no definition of any testing requirements, no definition of what kind of contaminants can or cannot be in something, no definition of dosing. So it's been very sort of apothecary as opposed to medicine. And I don't have a problem with that. But, if I, God forbid, or somebody that I loved came down with something, I don't want to have to call around to 8 people asking if they might have the right strain and then trust that person who knows a person who knows a person to grow it in such a way that's going to benefit my condition or the condition of my loved ones. I want to go to a dispensary and say, okay, I want this particular strain with this dose and I want to know it's safe. So as a consumer, a patient consumer, I would want that assurance. And I think the only way that a people assures the rest of their population, that something is truly accessible and safe is to put some rules around it. And I guess that's where we disagree.
Well,
I think that some people have not had a hard time, but people who are really not sort of inside this industry, who are looking at potentially wanting to try medical marijuana as an alternative therapy, are being shut down by the doctors.
Right.
Are being, and don't know people. You have to know people. And that's not fair. And I want everyone to be able to access it.
Well, I guess, if you were to ask me, if you were to conduct a poll that asked every single medical marijuana user in this state if they think that they've received an adequate amount of safe medicine on their behalf through the system we have, you would get at least an 85 to 90% yes answer.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
I'm just saying that you're, seems to me that there's a cure being offered to something that there is no disease that people have identified. We're offering an answer to a problem that doesn't exist as far as the medical marijuana community is concerned.
But then there's the rest of the community. There's the medical marijuana community, which are people who already know somebody. What about everyone else? And I guess I agree with you that largely this particular medical marijuana community has been incredibly responsible.
Yes.
If you took any other industry and took every single regulation away, it would be a disaster.
Mayhem.
And I think generally this particular industry and this particular community, considering the adverse conditions they've been operating under, has been incredibly responsible.
Well,
I think with some notable, ridiculous exceptions that always need to make the paper.
Right.
It's been incredibly responsible. I agree with you, but it's not going to.
It's still not a perfect system
for the last several years. It's not. What this bill is not perfect.
Right.
I mean, I'm on page 13, and I've got 3 pages of notes already.
Right.
Okay, it's not perfect.
Right.
No
bill ever is. No legislative bill ever is. It's part of the political process that you have to make. You have to make concessions, and there are concessions you may not want to make. But it's the only way to get it done, and that's what you're saying, isn't it, Denise?
It is. We have to start somewhere. We can't be mad at page 14, line 8.
Yes, we can.
We have to take this. Well, we can, but I mean, we need to take this for what it is.
Right.
A reasonably good foundation. We're not going anywhere. Like, particularly the MCDA, I can tell you, is not going anywhere. We understand that we're going to have to guard this thing, correct it, fight. And I think that, frankly, it's a little bit overkill. It's between you and me and everybody listening.
Right.
I think it's a bit overkill. But you know what? That's what we're also seeing in the municipalities. You say the word marijuana, people's heads explode, and they overreact. I think that...
It's the leadership. It's not the citizens that happen that way. It's always the township association that blows up.
I agree with you. Oops. Absolutely agreed.
All right.
Absolutely agreed.
So we're hitting break again.
That when some of this goes into effect, in a couple of years... all of this will be out there. The world will not have ended.
Right.
We will be able to do something a little bit more reasonable.
All right. When we come back on the other side of the break.
We're going to be there.
When we come back on the other side of the break, let's examine this a little bit from a different angle. Our guest on the program all hour is attorney Denise Pollicella. Stand by.
You're getting the full melt.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road, take care when passing, and always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
Imagine a world where patients can use marijuana like any other medicine. The Marijuana Patients Organization challenges the status quo by helping our neighbors to enjoy a better quality of life. Visit the MPO at marijuanapatients.org and enjoy informative articles, engaging debates, and information about treatments, doctors, and dispensaries in your area. Over 50,000 people have registered at marijuanapatients.org since 2010. Join us at the Marijuana Patients Organization today, marijuanapatients.org.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
Got something to hide? Cannalock offers discreet and effective storage solutions that destroy odor, so nobody knows. Cannalock is a patented charcoal-activated bag that discreetly stores your marijuana. Cannalock is made from the same material as military chemical warfare suits. Get yours at Cannalock.com. Visit Cannalock.com to learn more about no-smell technology.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release. We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that as traders we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade, you got this.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Man, time flies. Already just few precious moments left in the program. We've been talking about the package of bills that's recently started to make its way through the legislative process. I think in a final way. I would think that both myself and my guest Denise Pollicella would want to agree that we're hoping that this is a final way. Boy, we're really tired of having to address the legislature, do these protests and marches and call legislators and, raise money and hold fundraisers. It's maddening, Denise.
It's frustrating. It's exhausting. It's maddening. I mean, people are still being raided and deprived of all of their property, and their bank accounts are being seized, and their children are being traumatized, and their money is being taken still. And I'm tired of it, and I know everyone else has, completely been exhausted by it. And this is not, by any means, a perfect bill. It's not going to be, but it is a foundation. It will give some clarity, and hopefully it will get law enforcement to concentrate on, something else like crime.
Well, I thought we had that in the bag when we passed the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act in 2008.
I know, and I'll tell you what, I have not, like some folks in the industry, been in this since before the act.
Right.
I voted for it.
Me too.
And then I got into it in early 2009. And the reason I got into it was because I saw that, 63% of the voting public had voted for this in all three branches of government that they're in. And it was either that they were sort of frozen with not having any idea what to do because of the federal conflict or whatever, or they were just not going to do it.
They were in disbelief. They were in disbelief that this got done at all. They thought this was going to flop flat on its face.
Well, it didn't, thank goodness.
It did not.
But, but it's been an unexpectedly ridiculous and painful 7 years. I hope that it's starting to come to an end.
I certainly do, too. So, listen, I think in the light of the picture that we've just painted with what these bills mean to the people involved in the community now and to those who are interested in getting into the community, both as patients and as possibly business people now. This is the kind of the glance that I have on it, because I'll tell you what, I really don't want, and I've been encouraging people in the patient caregiver community, because they're like, oh, I'm going to have to get one of those licenses now. How much is it? Like $10,000? I'm like, no. Don't get one of those licenses, because I'm going to encourage every single person in the patient caregiver community right now to abstain from that process and to continue doing what they're doing and to ride this out until we get Michigan legalized passed in 2016. And when that happens, all this goes away. What do you think about that? I think...
You have every right to tell people to abstain, and I absolutely love the idea of legalized recreational marijuana, because I think that we are smart enough society to have a legal recreational drug like marijuana. I disagree that this is going to go away. I think it's unfortunate and a little naive, no offense, to think that Michigan's going to allow recreational legalized marijuana without taxing You know what
I think that Michigan MI legalized does it. It taxes and regulates. It sets up a system.
Yeah,
but what it does is it does it for the retail market, not for medical marijuana, which is what these bills have addressed. And what I'm saying is that if we abstain from,
I think there will be. I think there will be. I don't see that they're mutually exclusive. Actually, I think that they could probably fairly peacefully coexist. There are people who are going to want to do it just for medical purposes,
right,
and not recreational.
Right.
So we'll have to see.
But what I'm saying is when the retail market comes online, assuming that I think we both are in agreement that that's likely to happen, that this is going to happen. It'll probably happen with. I'm hoping it happens with MI legalized. But let's assume that
I think it's likely. Sure.
When this occurs, assuming that it does, just for the sake of argument, let's assume that it passed and that we're going to embark upon that, and this has been put into place. Now, if in order for this system to work, people have to participate in it. And you know from the get-go that there are a lot of people who are going to apply for those licenses, that are going to put up those facilities, that are going to go through all these hoops. And I'm saying if we starve them, we don't give these people an opportunity to dip into the pocketbooks of the people who really did the work in this community for 8 effing years. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, well, and you know what? I'm going to have to disagree with you again. The people who are going to be running these businesses are the people who have been starving and not sleeping and helping. The board members of the MCDA are all business owners and small business owners in this community.
Dispensary owners?
Sorry?
Dispensary owners?
Yes, absolutely. So, our goal, particularly at the MCDA, I'm not going to speak for other groups, but our goal has always been to protect the small, local, mom-and-pop economy business owner. That's always been it. Look, I don't think there's any stopping some people from coming in and trying to mass market something. But our goal has always been to protect Michigan-owned small businesses. I don't think they're going to go anywhere.
No, I think you're right. I think Michigan small business is always going to be the backbone of this economy. But what I think, in the grander scheme of things, what I think, from a perspective of, the place that I've existed inside of this community already, just personally, that it seems to me that a couple of things are left on the table here. Number one, there's this tremendous unanswered question, and it now becomes, assuming that all this gets passed, the elephant in the room is, what about the overage thing? I think it just leaves a gateway open for police to want to say, we know there's overage out there. Where's it at, boys? Go find it. And that you get more people getting searched after that way, because there will be leakage into that black market. Nobody in the face of the planet is destroying pot because you said you had too much. I don't see it happening.
I agree, but by example, how many illegal gin distilleries do you see in Michigan? I don't think that caregivers are going to be permitted to sell overages. They're not going to have anyone to sell to other than on the street. They certainly won't be selling to dispensaries, because dispensary owners, and there may be upwards of 1,000 of them, aren't going to risk their licenses buying it.
Well, right.
So I would think that, and honestly, I understand people think that they're going to be costed out of this, but a dispensary is just a storefront.
Sure,
it's not going to be prohibitively expensive. So
I think it is. I think $10,000 is prohibitive for me.
I guess we could have another conversation about whether that's prohibitive. It's expensive to open any business.
Yeah,
right?
but it doesn't cost $10,000 for the damn license.
I don't think it's going to cost 10, although I'm not positive at this point.
Right.
So I really don't know what the state's going to set the licenses at.
Denise, we're at the end of our time to talk about this, unfortunately. I've got so much more I want to say to wrap this up.
Talk all night.
I know, and I love you to
have another show.
I love you to death. I miss you so much as being a part of this program. As if nobody that's listening to this show now didn't know, Denise was a part of this program in 2 incarnations ago when it was the Medical Marijuana Radio Show, weren't you, Denise?
I was. That's actually still what I have you under on my phone, and that's why I picked up immediately when you called.
Well, thank you so much.
Moving farther and farther away from me, so.
If people need some guidance and assistance from Denise quickly before we run, tell them how they can get a hold of you, Denise.
Well, obviously, CannabisAttorneysofMichigan.com. You can also visit us on Facebook, where we constantly update. I also give very low cost and occasionally free seminars at my main office in Howell the first Tuesday of every month at 4 o'clock. Seminars on all things marijuana. So feel free to visit us online, and we will get you all in. Obviously, everyone wants the seminar right now on the bill.
Yeah, it's so much to do and not enough to go around.
That's how it feels.
Thank you so much for coming.
Me.
Yeah, thank you for being on. Denise, in the interest of our rest of our audience, we're going to join the Planet Green Trees show now, talking about more of this very same subject. Thanks, Denise, again, and we will talk to you next time on the Full Melt Show.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.
Here we go.
I am the Earth, the planet you call home. Scientists believe I'm at least 4.5 billion years old.
Alrighty.
We have launched.
Already we've launched. And for those of you who may be asking yourself, who's that guy with the deep voice talking about this? You're currently listening to Planet Green Trees, officially episode number 270. We are Michigan's premier medical cannabis and cannabis reform radio shows. Our intent, as maybe many of you have been witness to provide you week in and week out some of the most up-to-date and useful information, instructional, educational, hopefully, about what is happening in the medical cannabis and cannabis reform movement in Michigan. That's what we've been doing. We've been doing it for 270-plus weeks. And if anything, we've intended to provide a outline and a roadmap of how the implementation of the voter initiative of 2008, also known as the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, the voter initiative with over 3 million votes, statewide average of 63% of the electorate, how has that played out in Michigan? We've been doing it for a long time, and this week should be no different. I want to introduce the persons who are going to assist this week, as they have in weeks past. The technical director, someone who, when there are technical difficulties, remember to blame him. Chad from the Birmingham Compassion Club.
Good evening. It's nice to be here.
Moving around the room, we've got our news director, Planet Green Trees, and the editor-in-chief of the Compassion Chronicles, Rick Thompson.
Good evening, everyone.
Right on time and outspoken and very talkative, probably. Our esteemed producer and person that puts the shows together every week, this week being no different. Please welcome Jamie Lowell, Third Coast Compassion.
Hello.
We have also dear friend and the director, co-founder of Michigan Parents for Compassion, board member of the ballot group known as MI Legalize, regular of all regulars, Jim Powers.
Thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here.
Good friend joining us after a hiatus, even though he was back last week. We're going to give him as good enough an introduction for all the hard work he does and help for stuff that needs to be done. Please welcome T-Pain.
Oh, that's me. Hello, everybody.
I skipped over, even though it's not Passover, my good friend and colleague, barrister, brother counsel, Alan Peisner. I was trying to not let the audience know that we were all in costume. International civil rights attorney and man of mystery from the Galapagos, my good friend, colleague, attorney Jeff Frazier.
Hello.
All right, I want to give a couple shout-outs. Is anyone else that I missed here? No. First, shout-out to my good friend Dewey and Pam. Miss you this week. I hope things are going well for you. We're going to get back into it tomorrow, starting it up again. All of our good friends over at the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org, specifically the moderators and administrators who helped the forum conversation about medical cannabis evolve. Warriors Bob Redden, art director David Light. Always, every week. All our friends, I don't know, someone help me. Who am I missing? All the people that are listening, thank you. And just for, let's get into a routine. Reach to your right, reach to your left. Give somebody a hug right now.
Come here, Chad.
Eric Gunnels, our good friend, Thetford Township. Is Charmy showing up tonight? Oh. Anyways. All right, so tonight we're excited. The name of the show is 4209 and 4210 Move to the Senate. Let's say move to Senate, not the Senate. Why support this model? That's the query we've proposed. And tonight, who voted for these bills? What changes have been made? Can these bills be supported by the medical cannabis reform community? Do these bills create more reasons to arrest patients? What kind of prices should patients expect to pay for cannabis? Our dear friend and really one of the few legislators that we could say is rational, reasonable, and we like, Jeff Irwin from Ann Arbor, will be calling in to explain his take on the bills and what they mean for Michigan. We're going to have an update, I'm presuming, from MI Legalize with the comparable Justice Scoggins. Did I miss anything, Jamie?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, good.
He's helping me prepare for the news.
What's that?
He's helping me prepare for the news. He's like my news nurse.
I understand.
Right.
So, I guess, what time is he calling in at? Do we know? Okay.
9 o'clock.
So
9er.
All right, so I'm going to rant in a minute, then we're going to come back and we'll take a break, come back to the news, and go from there. All right, so real quick, I've been on this rant as of late, talking about how awesome the police are, and I mean that they are awesome, and listen to the last few episodes of me talking about how awesome they are. But as I was going through my notes of things to discuss, there's usually a lot of material, and this week is no different, but I did come across some question and answers that I was kind of filling out for when we were on the Dr. Nandy show. Rick, remember we were on the Dr. Nandy show?
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. And Jamie was in the audience, too. There were quite a few of
So
us.
was
Jim Bowers on the show with us?
I was on the show.
With his child.
I was.
Three of us sitting up on there on
and
the
so
national
was Rick,
television.
and so was Michael. It was a great day.
Really poorly edited, by the way. We could have, they edited in, an opponent that we didn't even know was there, and, we're dropped, remember, or something?
I know. There was a beautiful show, and the first edit was great, but the second edit blew. Because we made such good points that we overshadowed the television jock that they had on opposing us.
I remember saying, he asked a question, and I said to Dr. Andy, doesn't that kind of mean you should legalize it? And there was a pause. That didn't make it into the edits.
No, and I said there's been no established history of damage from marijuana use after over a century of document in the United States, something like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed in Dr. Nandy and his stance on medical marijuana, though he has not been our biggest ally, quite frankly.
But we're interrupting the rant.
Sorry.
It's okay. Well, in the context of all this, and I want to talk about a little bit about the bills and the impact. But as we go forward with this, I want to try to look on the bright side of the 4209. But of course, there's no bright side. And opening this thing up is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It's half useful, and half of the challenge is not to get stuck by it and infect your finger. But as I was looking over the Dr. Nandy reports, one of the questions that was posed, and Rick, do you remember when you probably asked, what are your thoughts of this and how's it? One of the questions was, what are some of the negative aspects in the fight for medical marijuana?
Right.
So, I went through a whole thing of how this is really medicine, and Park Davis and Eli Lilly back in the 1930s, and they were marketing marijuana cigarettes as remedies for asthma back then. The 1937 hearings referencing Dr. William Woodward, Dr. C. Woodward, who was the legislative counsel for the American Medical Association, and announced his opposition to criminalizing medical marijuana at that time. Didn't know what marijuana was. They knew it was cannabis, and pointing out the hypocrisy of the 1970 Congress's Controlled Substance Act and all the nonsense of President Nixon. And then I went on to describe, this total resistance and the negative aspects in the fight for medical marijuana has been mostly from the judges and prosecutors to allow the law to work as it is intended. And too often I've heard judges and prosecutors state how poorly written the MMA was. And I laugh when I hear this, because who cares if I think a law is poorly written, as if it's going to make a difference in how they're going to interpret a case. But really what they meant when they say that it's poorly written is that it was written in a way to protect people and not used against people, despite the fact that we're seeing just the opposite. I've complained often that there's very little education that's been put forth, and we're still dealing with a law enforcement community that sees this as only a revenue source and forfeiture and is yet to really see the public health side of it. And despite some nominal changes, the forfeiture, what appears to be some of the forfeiture laws, there still is a huge incentive, and in such that there's $24 million a year being brought in by forfeiture. That's kind of difficult to give up, which remains a problem. But one of the questions as it closes here was like, what do you see progress in the near future? And I go on to discuss the Michigan medical marijuana is a caregiver-based system. That means that individuals who qualify as patients can grow their own cannabis or select a person who qualifies as a caregiver to grow the plant for them. The Act does not provide specific guidelines for protections for dispensaries or commercial retail sales. As cannabis becomes more normalized as medicine or an alternative choice to beer and liquor, I believe we'll see a movement in the direction of a more regulated, government-controlled system. Many caregivers are concerned that a commercial market will result in home growing being removed as an option in favor of a more centralized, large-scale commercial grow operation. There are concerns that a taxed and regulated market result in corporate takeover of the growing of marijuana, resulting in increased costs to consumers with lower quality product in the marketplace. Ultimately, as public opinion changes about medical cannabis, the responsible adult use people will expect to acquire their cannabis like they do other commercial purchases. That is to say, they will expect it to be packaged, labeled, and accurately describing the contents therein. But I'd say all that, and it was interesting to see this because this Dr. Nandy show was 2013, 2014, and as we stand here, as these bills are moving to the Senate, the fear of the caregiver system not being either snuffed out or not being part of this industry is clearly taking place. And it's unfortunate that it has gotten to this point when the introduction of these bills back in 2012 solely looked to the existing caregiver system and would have only been approved to be entered into the system with the approval of the medical cannabis system if it relied upon the caregiver system. It's a real disservice to shut these individuals out, and we're wondering, there's no wonder. If you are a caregiver, you can't participate in the regulated system and own a license. And if you participate in the regulated system and own a license, you cannot be a caregiver. And that's the way things are lining up. Anyways, this wasn't a point to really say that there is that I predicted this to happen or that we anticipate this as a fear to happen, but nobody knew or understood the sheer awesomeness of the police, because they have created a situation here where that is what is taking place. And as we move to the next phase of this, we have a more than regulated, more unnecessarily overly regulated, which is going to which is not a market-based, open economy, laissez-faire driven type of market. It is going to be directed by not the most effective or most efficient, but by regulations that require things to take place that do not benefit the commerce, that do not benefit the consumer, do not benefit the producer, manufacturer, and just for the purpose of regulating and creating rules that will result in penalties of some kind. But that's the rant for now. I hope we can talk about this a little bit more. I know I'm not allowed to talk badly about 4210, I've been told, because that
4210 is a good bill.
There we go. We're going to hear from Jim Powers. He's going to explain what has changed. Many people don't understand. That, of course, is the non-smokable bill. There's a direct impact on parents. The question, Jim, is Comorn Law off the hook for taking cases for parents who get charged here now?
If this bill passes, I don't think that we'll have any issues.
All right. That's good. All right, so that's the story. We'll take a quick break. We've got a lot of exciting stuff. I know Jeff Frazier, attorney, and Alan are going to be chiming in a lot tonight, they promised. And we'll take a quick break. Call numbers 1-347-326-9626, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, we're back. Thanks for staying with us. You're listening to Planet Green Trees, episode number 270. We're calling it 4209 and 4210, Move to the Senate, Why Support This Model. I do want to announce that Sharmi Golson is supposed to be calling in shortly to discuss recent events of some newsworthy things. In the interim, we are going to go directly to the news. And before we do, I'm going to go start with this.
I dig it.
And without further ado, please welcome, if you will, Rick Thompson with the news.
Everybody, thanks so much, Michael. It's the news. It's October. What is it, October 7th today? Today is October 8th. I get 2015 right, though, correct? Good, thanks. And it's the news. I'm Rick Thompson.
If a guy named Rick says he wants to stick something in your mouth on the side of the road, it's usually a good idea to say no to that. But if he's wearing a state police uniform, you may not be able to. A new bill will give police the ability to use a swab kit to test suspected drug drivers on the road. Senator Rick Jones, Ricky, described it this way. The officer will take this clean device. It has a little sponge on it. He'll read all the rights and then simply ask the person to open their mouth and in and out, in and out, in and out, and into the container. The science is there to tell the officer exactly what you're doing, whether you're high on marijuana, cocaine, or heroin, he explained. He's been pushing the bill for 3 years. Listen to this. He says the state police crime lab has finally approved the pilot program. Since when does the crime lab get to decide that? He says they'll select 3 counties to start it in, and then over time it'll be phased into the entire state. Here's another little gem, guys. In 2014, the Michigan State Police say 87 fatal accidents were caused by marijuana on Michigan roads. 87. Wow, I thought so. That's a crazy number. Here's Sergeant Amy Denner, our friend. We're very concerned. I think especially because of the legislation that's entertaining expanding medical marijuana. We don't want to be caught in a situation where we're trying to be proactive after something is already rolled out. You can't be proactive after. You can be reactive, but whatever. And we get caught behind the 8 ball on it. Craziness. What logic stream is that? A new report pegs the number of marijuana dispensaries in Detroit. How many marijuana dispensaries in Detroit, guys? 148. Everybody in the studios read this news report. Good. We're all up on it. Prior to this report, Detroit public officials couldn't say how many dispensaries there were, partly because they're opening at such a rapid pace, but mostly because the city doesn't keep track of them. So let's see, the massive Detroit city government can't keep track of how many dispensaries there are, but somebody using a Blexting concept can do that. City Council is debating proposed licensing regulations. A public hearing is set for 10 a.m. on Monday, and I encourage everyone to attend. Of the 148 dispensaries identified in Detroit, 100 are within about 1.15 miles of the suburbs. 59, including some of them near suburbs, are within 1,000 feet of an active school, according to a report called Weed in the D. You might as well put a gold chain on that title, Weed in the D. Published Monday by local mapping company Loveland Technologies. The report cautions that estimates are probably low. 148 is low. If so, Detroit would have more than one marijuana dispensary per square mile. The city is 139 square miles in size. Marijuana retail is clearly a growth business, the report says. Oh, a Michigan laboratory that trusts marijuana strains for potency and pollutants has expanded to Oregon, opening a branch in Eugene. Iron Laboratories, long-term Michigan fixture in the community. They've opened a 4-employee lab in Centennial Loop near Lithia Chrysler Jeep Dodge of Eugene. Oregon laws regulating medical and recreational marijuana sales require growers, processors, medical dispensaries, and retail businesses to test their products for pollutants such as pesticides, mildew, mold, and other contaminants that could taint crops and harm users. Iron Laboratories has tested more than 40,000 strains for medical marijuana dispensaries in Michigan since 2011, Chief Operating Officer Mike Goldman said. He said Oregon was a logical place for the company's first expansion outside Michigan, with recreational sales starting here this month. The company is also looking to open a lab in Tacoma, where medical and recreational pot are legal, and possibly Arizona, which also allows medical marijuana. But Oregon stood out for its active growing scene. Quote, "It's almost the Napa Valley of marijuana." Detroit City Council is expected to vote on a medical marijuana ordinance in the coming weeks. It would create zoning, licensing, and inspection guidelines for marijuana dispensaries. An ordinance has been introduced and is going through Council's committee process. As I mentioned in the previous story, there is a meeting at 10 a.m. at the Coleman A. Young Building, 13th floor. Please attend. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan says he's on board with creating some regulations and thinks the proposed ordinance at least moves things in the right direction. There's about 148 medical marijuana dispensaries in Detroit. Well, residents have complained about some of them proliferating in the city. Detroit joins a growing list of Michigan cities that is either passed or is considering a local ordinance to set some rules. How crazy is it that Detroit is chasing Ypsilanti as one of the leaders on that issue in the state? All right. How about crazy man Mayor Jim Fouts of Warren? On Wednesday, he called City Council to pass an ordinance regulating the growth of marijuana for medical purposes. I'd like you guys to pay attention to this one real quick because we have a little issue here. In the new ordinance proposed by Jim Fouts and Warren, he would like caregivers to register, and he would like them to monitor, if approved, energy usage and heat levels in the growing room must be documented.
Huh.
Have you ever heard of heat levels in a growing room having to be documented?
Did anybody ask him what it feels like to want?
That's crazy. Installation of filtration equipment to block odors. Qualifying patients and primary caregivers shall not distribute to anyone from their home. And they would only be able to, they'd have to have shields on your windows to block light from 11 p.m. and 7 p.m. So what is that? So from 11 p.m. and 7 p.m., that means you're blocking it for all except 4 hours of the day. What the hell? And, of course, inside a vehicle, medical marijuana could only be transported in a locked case. Again, Mayor Jim Fouts, crazy.
Nothing new from him, man.
And that's the news, everybody. It is October, whatever the day it is. It's the 8th, I know. I was just teasing. I'm Rick Thompson. Thanks for the news.
That ordinance reminds me of what they did in Bloomfield Township a few years ago, which was after the MMA was passed. They wanted everyone to register, and it was a local ordinance violation if you didn't.
Right.
But they were preemptively sued on that one. And although the judge refused to issue an injunction on enforcing it because they hadn't ticketed anybody.
Because there's no aggrieved party.
But I mean, as far as I know, they never enforced the ordinance.
Yeah. Hey, I like it. Let's use the Archer theme song for my theme song. That would be great.
Hey, so I just got word that Charmaine's not calling in.
Well, people who were sued on that case actually were caregivers.
Keep your face pointed at the microphone.
Were caregivers, but they hadn't been ticketed yet, so they had standing.
Oh.
But they hadn't been by.
I have a great idea.
Sense that they had the threat of the ordinance, but because there wasn't any actual violation, the judge in the Oakland County Circuit Court, I believe, was Denise Pollicella, dismissed the case.
Isn't it so crazy, all the different wrinkles? You know, yeah. Every little thing can upset the apple cart.
Listen, we have an important topic to discuss, and we have Jeff Irwin calling in later. Jeff Irwin, Democrat state representative.
Our hero.
And but before we get to it, we should put some of this in context so when it happens we can more intelligently discuss. First, I want to give a shout out to Steve Green. Steve Green, I see, is listening, and we hope his audience is listening as well.
Full Melt.
What is it?
The Full Melt Radio Show.
Hello.
Steve Green, of course, a longtime radio activist. That's a thing, radio activist.
You know what? Excellent. You, sir, are radio activist.
Which Steve Green?
And super attorney Michael Camoran. That's your new moniker, radio activist and super attorney Michael Camoran.
Steve's
yeah.
All right, so, but anyway, so let's talk about this. Jim Powers is in the light right now. Jeff, I know you've been analyzing this with because there's too much chatter in the background. I just want to know. It's very distracting to.
It's a loud studio.
Jim, well, we were not allowed to talk badly about 4210.
No,
But last week we were, and changes need to be made.
Yeah, changes
because there was
needed.
problems. What was the problem last week? Why are you so upset last week?
Well, because there were some criminal penalties in that bill that were really severe. There's labeling and manifest requirements in 4210 for people that carry what they call marijuana-infused products. And a violation of the labeling or manifest requirements would have resulted in a misdemeanor with a maximum sentence of 93 days in jail. And although most people, don't go to jail for a crime like that, what it does do is involve DHS in your life, and that's something our families don't want. So that was one issue. Another issue was the fact that it would ban the butane extraction on residential property. So in any residentially zoned area, you would be unable to use butane to extract THC resin.
Either indoor or outdoor.
Correct.
Originally.
So we had asked for that to be modified as well, just to not allow it inside of a residence or a residential structure. And then the third issue was the funding of the tracking system via the Marijuana Patient Fund. We felt very strongly that any sort of tracking system should be paid for directly by the businesses that were being regulated and forced to use it, and not by the patients and caregivers of the state of Michigan. And I'm really happy to say, in a very large part due to Representative Jeff Irwin, the NPRA, the MCDA, the lobbying groups, they all went to bat, I think, and we got changes that address every single one of those issues. So 4210 is now a bill that won't create new criminals, that will protect people under Section 4 explicitly for things like resin extracts or marijuana-infused medibles. Your mic's not on.
And retroactively as well, right?
Correct. So any pending cases would be thrown out. This bill would be a huge win for patients that use these types of medicine, and it would force that these...
The weights and measures are different. Explain those to the listeners. I know the first time through they were divided the various types of methods of ingestion, liquids, solids, and gaseous types of products. Gaseous. Those are still the three categories that are being utilized?
Correct. So the way that the weights work is, and just to give a little background, anybody that's familiar with the Crothers case knows that Earl Crothers had brownies, and when the Michigan State Police went to analyze these brownies, what they told everybody is that they couldn't quantify the amount of marijuana that was in the brownies. All they could tell you is that there was marijuana in the brownies. So they came with the same basic argument and said that in order for them to be able to make sure that someone was truly in compliance with Section 4 of the Act, that there would have to be weight equivalents. And the weight equivalents are, I don't think, outlandish. I think they're pretty reasonable. And there was one minor change in this last revision of the bill. But what it would allow for is 16 ounces for every 1 ounce of flower marijuana when you're talking about a solid food item. So essentially that would allow for 40 ounces of solid medibles. If it's in a liquid form, it would be 36 ounces. So we take 36 ounces and multiply it by 2.5 because we're allowed 2.5 ounces of flour under the Act. And that comes up to 90, I believe, ounces of liquid form that you would be allowed. And then it's in a gaseous form, which everybody is pretty much interpreting at this point that the gaseous form would be, the extracts and concentrate.
An inhaler type of a puffer thing. Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm sure that there's going to be some court cases on exactly what that means. But if it's in a gaseous form, it's 7 ounces. So you're talking, 17.5 ounces of gaseous, grams. I'm sorry, it's grams of gaseous. So it's 7 grams. So it's 17.5 total grams that you would be allowed under Section 4 of the Act.
For things that have been extracted.
Well, that's what some people are interpreting it as. But what does in a gaseous form mean? I mean, I don't think anybody really truly knows. I expect that you'll be figuring it out, Michael, in court.
But we do, though. That's specifically defined from Colorado as the inhalers, the puffers and things like that.
You know why? Because smoke and inhaling anything is not listed within the...
That's true.
So it's all illegal. If you're smoking instead of eating marijuana, that is a non-usable,
that's true.
Just like a brownie.
But the important thing, and we were just reviewing this here with Jeff, is, and this was what we asked for all along. Right after Crothers, I remember specifically sitting down with Robin Schneider of the NPRA and saying, Robin, we need to just redefine usable marijuana. And she was, yes, that's exactly what we're saying. So we were in total agreement, and that's what we originally wanted. And that change is still in place. So usable marijuana is now redefined and specifically calls out plant resins and extracts. So there will be no more debate from prosecutors or judges or law enforcement on what It is. It is usable marijuana under the Act and would be protected under Section 4.
Jim, I just want to say, you said that it's classified. That's what the bill proposes. It has not been a change in law yet.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure that anyone that's listening or maybe tuned in after the preamble that we gave to the segment realizes we're talking about the potential changes represented by a trio of bills passed by the Michigan House of Representatives earlier this week, and those are not actual law yet.
Is retroactive a add-on by the Honorable Jeff Irwin?
I'm not sure. I mean, Jeff, Representative Irwin has really gone to bat for us.
People need to know also, but this is an amendment to the Michigan Medical Marijuana. It'll find itself in Section 4.
Although you don't think Representative Colton said that none of them require a supermajority, that they're all just a simple majority bill.
Well, Representative Colton, I believe, was incorrect about that. We're amending the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and for anyone that doesn't know, in order to modify a voter initiative or a voter-initiated legislation, which is what the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act is, the legislature has to have a 75% supermajority vote in both the House and the Senate. And that's done on purpose, and it's done because this is a people's law. The people of Michigan demanded that this law be put into place, and there has to be safeguards. But as it stands right now, I passed out of the House with flying colors. We're going into, Senator Jones' committee, the Judiciary and the Senate, and I know that, in my conversations with him, he expressed, support on the non-smokable issue. On the dispensary issue, he's very much for regulation and very strict regulation. He feels that it should be treated as a pharmaceutical drug. So I believe that we'll see some of that in the Senate Judiciary coming up.
He indicated in news reports earlier this week that he'd like to see that 3% tax ramped back up to where it was before at 8%. Of course, he always wants to earmark more money for the sheriffs, and that's been changed in the current version of the most latest substitute in the House. So if the sheriffs get more money, the general fund gets less. That's how it was earmarked.
Well, I think there's going to be some back and forth. Senator Jones is really good when it comes to negotiating these types of things, and he knows exactly when he has some leverage. And I think that tax will probably be used as leverage for one of his other issues. We've got the landlord-tenant issue that we're all very, very aware of, and I think that it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect that may make a comeback.
It will.
And, the one thing that we really want to make sure that we squash, obviously, is any trying to limit our ability as patients to be able to drive a motor vehicle.
Well, the oral swab testing is definitely going to be part of that, too. And there's a 5 nanogram driving limit bill that's already been introduced in the Senate. So that's still sitting right there and available to him to pass along with it as a package.
I believe that one is actually in the House. That was Representative Lucido, but it is in the House Judiciary, and it's in front of Representative Kesto. I'm really not sure why they didn't call it. I think that it maybe was just a little too, far-reaching and a little too, it was not good legislation, and I think that people are going to get upset about it, and we're going to need to make sure that when it does come up, and it will, that we squash it, because any really sick person that's on oil or extracts is always going to be in violation of that limit.
And Michael makes a very good point that, if there's 87 deaths recorded in 2014, where in the world was any of the news on that? Where was that?
Hey, so we have Josie with us to come in and do the Am I Legalized report, and Rep. Irwin coming up a little bit later on, where we'll get right back into this particular discussion, which is...
Give you a song for Josie's intro.
Word up.
Well, how many times must we go through this? You always been my woman, I thought you knew.
Aww, that's a nice
how many times must we go through this? You always be mine.
All right. Okay.
That's it. No more song for you.
Welcome, please. Am I Legalized Zone? Josie.
Josie, are you there? Josie, I hear you.
Okay.
Yay! We heard you have a very in-depth report for us. Jamie was just telling me it's going to be very detailed and may span 10 minutes.
Nope. So just got a really quick update for today. We do have 2 fundraisers coming up this month. We do still have matching funds. This time it's $100,000 and not $50,000. We have been successful in each match that we've done. So every dollar that you donate is doubled. If you are donating money, we do need you to include your phone number, your address, and your full name. If it's anything over $100 in the entire election cycle, then we'll also need your employer's address and your employer's name. If you're self-employed or you are the employer, that's easy. You fill it out like that. We are having a fundraiser in Detroit, both towards the end of the month. We are right on pace, so we are succeeded the 100,000. Definitely succeeded the 100,000 mark. We're totally on track and kicking ass.
We blew it out of the water, Josie.
Yeah, we've been great.
Oh, yeah. We're doing a great job. It is getting colder.
You baby.
It is.
Go ahead.
It is getting
Go ahead,
colder, and we're hoping that our volunteer base stays just as active and just as consistent. I was speaking with Chris earlier in the week, and he had mentioned that we have the highest validity that he's with. And that the company Grebner that we have hired to do our validity has said that we have amazing validity. So rock on to our volunteers. We still do have almost 100 locations where you can sign the petition. We do need people petitioning at football games on Saturdays. Also, hit up your Halloween stores, outside of your Halloween stores. They've often asked where we can petition. You can petition anywhere that is public property. So things like sidewalks or places you have permission. A lot of places will allow you to petition outside. Parking lots are often considered private grounds. We are in need of people collecting signatures at the MSU game, specifically in Lansing.
Go White.
Also, if you are in Lansing, our friends at Golden Harvest have offered free coffee and hot chocolate to anyone who spends the morning out there. They're open 7 to noon. They said everybody will sign the petition, and they get anywhere between 100 to 200 people a day. That's for you to fill your bellies and keep your warm. Other than that, keep up the good work. Make sure you're mailing your petitions. We do have petition instructions. You can sign up. You can still sign up to be a volunteer online. And we do understand that Christmas is coming up, so if you want to, if you're interested in collecting signatures for money, for $1 per dollar signature, fill out a W-2 and you give us a call at 844-LEGAL-16. That's 844-LEGAL-16. Thank you, guys.
Josie, we've got a ton of fundraisers coming up, and if we could go over some of those briefly. I know normally I'd have Jamie help us with this, but he's right here behind me. So we got the Flint fundraiser coming up October 16th. We've got a fundraiser in Detroit on October 28th. We've got a fundraiser in Grand Rapids on October 29th. Right, Jamie?
That's right.
You can do a little bit better job of filling in the details than I.
So October 16th, we'll be at the Flint Golf Club. That's somewhat of an exclusive event hosted and sponsored by Kirsch, Leach, and Associates Law Firm. And then there will be one in Detroit, one in Grand Rapids, 28th in Detroit at the Rooster Tail, 29th in Grand Rapids at an art gallery. I don't have the name right in front of me. All that information will be on milegalize.com and passed around otherwise. And there's going to be a press release coming out about those pretty soon. And that's what I know. Josie could probably fill in additional gaps of other things happen at those events as well.
Yeah, the MI Legalize connection is the way to go because you can get tickets for those events and find out all of the locations and details on each one of them too. Right, Jose?
Yeah, they should be up on the website by the end of the week. I don't know that we have them on there yet. I actually talked to Jim earlier today about those events because I know just about everything, but nobody likes to know it all.
And it was announced. I saw in a press article that the MCC is on a 3-week hiatus. They've decided to step back from their collection campaign for 3 weeks to get their head together, see what's going on.
Well,
got to reevaluate their life and see if they want to move out of their basement and see if they get a real world job.
The gnome's tired, man. The gnome needed a nap.
His pipe is empty. The gnome's pipe is empty. So we are. There can be only one.
And if you have been petitioning for the MCC and you're interested in petitioning for a dollar ballot signature, get a hold of us because we are interested in your help. And we need help everywhere. Definitely in Metro Detroit. West Michigan's got some badass leadership. Northern Michigan has some badass leadership. Flint has some badass leadership. Everybody's got great leaders. If you're in the state of Michigan, you can totally collect signatures. You don't even have to be registered to vote. You just have to be a U.S. citizen. And over the age of 18. So get your kids out on this. They're not doing anything.
Use your kids as bait. Dress them up in Halloween costumes and have 2 or 3 of them running around drawing attention to you, right? That's the way to do it. Get the Rugrats involved. Yeah, you know it. All right. Josie, you're so beautiful. Thanks so much. Dakota, he's there, right?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Dakota, what's going on with you, man? I know we have Jeff Irwin coming up in just a minute. I hope we have a moment to just talk about you and what you've got planned on your next adventure.
Well, I'm really focused on these House bills going to the Senate, man. It's funny that I'm reading about these mouth swabs and everything, and I actually I was witness to a falsified drug test where the mouth swab was run under tap water and sent into a lab, and it came back and tested positive for THC and cocaine. I've also watched piss tests, those little strips that they get dipped in tap water and test positive for cocaine and THC, and the mouth swabs aren't an FDA approved way to test things due to inaccuracies, and so
can we get some of that water?
I can tell you where it's at. It's in Lansing.
All right, we want some of that water.
Wow.
Yeah. So hopefully, we can talk some sense into these senators on the hearings and whatnot, and I don't know, maybe we can do something positive to where we can either change these bills or get certain ones killed to be rewritten because they have no idea what they're about to do to the state and who they're screwing over. And
well, here's what we know about the Senate. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josie.
I don't think it's as detrimental as what it was. It's definitely not as good as our bill. It's not as good as the proposal with my legalized, and everyone should still be 100% trying to push it and get it through to the ballot. Right. But it's definitely not as bad as it was, and that's awesome, I think.
I liken it to it's not as bad. It's sort of like getting shot with a 38 instead of getting shot with a 44. Okay, so you're still taking a hit. You're still bleeding all over the place, but the hole's slightly smaller. So it's still the same impact, and that's a concern. It is better, though, through the work of Jeff Irwin and a lot of activists and NPRA and the other groups that were cited earlier. A lot of people have really put some time in on this. I'm just concerned that when you get into the Senate, here's the thing. There are fewer members of the Senate than there are in the House of Representatives. So you have fewer people that you need to sway in order to stop something or in order to make effective change because, there's that way. But the senators are selected, oftentimes because of party loyalty, and it's extremely partisan. In fact, there's a super minority in the Senate, which means there are less than 25% Democrats in the Senate. So that's a problem because if the Republican Party wishes to move something, everybody just needs to be a good soldier and do what the guy next to him is doing, and they get it. So
they need to be reminded very, very, very importantly, they need to be reminded that they don't represent their parties. They don't need to be loyal to the parties. They need to represent the people and be loyal to the people, and they haven't been doing that.
True.
We, obviously, the cannabis community are fed up. Veterans are fed up. There's so many people just sick of being pushed around in the ways that these people have been doing. And hopefully, we can keep it peaceful. Everybody around me is just getting more and more angry. And, I'm afraid what the future might hold, but hopefully we can talk sense into these people.
Well, it's about who you're listening to as far as whether you think your idea is good. If you're surrounded by yes men, then every lame idea that comes to your mind is approved by everybody around you because they're all yes, yes, yes. But when it's open to debate in a public forum and you can have the weaknesses of your argument exposed, then that's where real growth happens and that's where compromise should take place. But what we're seeing now is that these guys are acting with a small group of advisors with an intent that's to make commercial enterprise. If you look how drastic the change is in the language of the bills now versus where it was 6 months ago, 8 months ago, damn, it's not even the same. I mean, they had to change the name of the bill. It's no longer the Provisioning Centers Act. It's now the blah, 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 Marijuana Act. They couldn't even call it the same name anymore because it's so radically changed. And that says something about it. So, by the way, don't ask me how to spell blah, 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 blah. Because it's,
Yeah, which house bill is that one?
All right, listen, guys. Anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap this segment up?
Yeah, they got the Dabaween thing coming up here at the Jam Shack thing in Flint. Specifically that event, we've been collecting clothes, hats, boots, all that good warm stuff for the winter for homeless veterans and homeless people all over the state. Small little groups and individuals are coming together and collaborating ways to get as much stuff as we can dropped off to the places and to the people we know that distribute them. So the Jam Shack in Flint, there's the Spot in Kalamazoo, there's the Down to Earth, the Holistic Center in Lansing. They're willing to act as hubs for people to drop stuff off if they want to. And, hopefully we can make a difference this winter and keep some people warm.
So that way, if you can't participate in Dabaween, you can still participate in the clothing drive by visiting one of these centers ahead of time and dropping your clothing off, right?
Correct.
Absolutely. Can you get the details on location, date, and time on the Dabaween for us there, please?
It is October 30th is what I know so far. And it's at the Jam Shack. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jamie, I'm asking Jamie Lowell, what time does Dabaween begin on that date?
When I get there.
Hey, Alan Peisner's the party. That's it. When Alan
But it's
arrives,
all free, man. They took a bunch of really awesome sponsors. It's they're providing a whole bunch of free stuff. It's on October 30th. Starts at 7 p.m. It's 5411 North Saginaw Street in Mount Morris. That's right outside Flint.
You rock. That's great. 7 p.m. Jamie Lowell tells us from the internet. According to Facebook, you know what? That's a wonderful event. The things we're going to do, and it's a unity theme too. So, show up as somebody that you don't like, and kind of do that.
Okay.
Yep. Hey, guys, we're going to have to bring the segment to a close because we have our caller. But thanks so much, and I appreciate the update. And good job on reminding us about Dabaween.
All right. So I think our next callers in the queue are a good friend, Democrat State Representative. Jeff Irwin, also a fan of Planet Creatures. Welcome back to the show, Representative.
Good evening.
Yay. So, all the talk, of course, is 4209 and 4210. I guess.
Which is a good bill.
Which one? 4210?
Yes.
4210. Yes, we're not allowed to talk badly of 4210. What are your thoughts on it? What did you think were some of the important changes that took place, if any? And what do you think its chances are to make it through the Senate as is?
Sure. Well, it was a challenging week for me because I think those of you who were part of the process know that when the bills came out of committee, I was voting no, and I was trying to point out some of the deficiencies in the system, trying to point out that the type of over-aggressive regulations being contemplated here is going to really drive patients into the black market. It's going to actually benefit those types of businesses rather than the ones who choose to be legal and licensed. And so, that was an effort that I was trying to engage in to make the bills better, to try to pare down these regulations to a reasonable level because, going into the process, I was pretty comfortable with where the bill started. There's a little bit of record keeping, there's testing and labeling, and maybe even that went a little too far, but it really seemed to make sense, and particularly for the concentrates and edibles, I think that the labeling and dosing information is important. But then we had the seed to sale tracking system added, we had the tax added, we had the secure transport company added, we had all these different layers of cost and bureaucracy added to the system, and so I was very concerned about those elements. I made a number of specific points, including some amendments in committee that were all rejected. And then when the bills went out onto the floor, there was some negotiation about how could we improve some of these elements of the bill. And, going from, I think, maybe the biggest items to some of the smaller items people might not have noticed, obviously the excise tax, the tax that's going to be paid when cultivators sell product to the retail facilities, that tax was reduced from 8% to 3%. Now, my original position was we should get rid of that tax. We don't tax medicine. And, a number of my Democratic colleagues, particularly our House Democratic leader, Tim Grimel, voted no on House Bill 4209 for that reason. And believe me, there was a part of me that wanted to, but there was so much movement on that piece down from 8 to 3, there was a point at which I had to give them an opportunity to earn my support. So, that was a big piece. That's going to be, I think, particularly significant to patients that are using dispensaries and are buying a lot of product because they're very sick or the condition requires it. So that was a big piece. Some of the other pieces that were important are, by capping the license fee for the Class A licenses, the smallest license, I think that gives folks who have a small business approach and who are maybe caregivers who are thinking of taking their activity to the next level, it gives them a chance to get in. What we saw in some of these other states is that licenses were being assessed fees by other states that were really, really, really high. I mean, I think Illinois is up at the $200,000 level, and we heard loud and clear from a lot of folks that were afraid that these bills were going to basically be a big giveaway to big business and that smaller businesses wouldn't get a chance. And so making that argument, we got a cap on the lowest level of license for the cultivators. And I think that is going to also have the practical effect of capping the other licenses. I mean, there's no cap in the bill for the larger cultivation licenses, but, if the Class A license is $10,000, it's not going to make a lot of sense for the state to charge a lot more for licenses that don't allow, that many more plants. So that was a big piece. Probably the piece that I was most focused on and, I thought was most important was to make sure that less people go to court and less people go to jail. And as you know, these bills are laden with all sorts of rules and regulations. And I wanted to make sure that, particularly for patients and caregivers, that if they run afoul of these bureaucratic strictures in some sort of technical way, that should be a civil and not a criminal fine. And so we were able to get the violations of the new transport rules around, keeping a manifest of where you're going and, what you're taking, and also the rules around keeping the concentrates and edibles in a locked container in your trunk. Folks who violate those rules are going to be treated with civil fines, which is going to, prevent some people from ending up, in court. And that's a good thing. I felt strongly about that. I was really happy with those changes in 4210. There was also a change made to the prohibition on butane hash oil extractions. Now, a lot of my colleagues are very worried about, the danger of having flammable substance like that in people's residential homes. But I pointed out to them, I think a lot of them really understood or kind of got it once they heard it, that, the reason why people do these extractions indoors is because it's illegal and they're hiding. Maybe if we were allow people to do these types of things outdoors, which makes a lot more sense from a safety standpoint, we would solve both problems. And so there was a change made to that language that limited the prohibition on BHO extractions to prohibiting them being done inside on residential property. So that was another change. Gosh, I'm not working off a set of notes here, but those were a set of the big ones that I was excited about and that showed some real movement on the bills.
Yeah, and we got that tracking system removed, the funding of the tracking system too, Representative Irwin. I mean,
that was another piece. Yeah, that was another piece, which was originally. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we didn't want the patients and caregivers to be paying for the regulation of the businesses. That didn't make a lot of sense. And straightening that out was another important piece.
I think people need to understand, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the two different pieces of legislation. One of them amends the Michigan Medical Marijuana, actually is going to be inserted into Section 4. There's pieces in Section 7 with the prohibition of the butane. But it identifies different weights for these materials, and the violations of them are civil infractions, which, of course, is the thing that you were speaking about, not criminalizing it. I noticed that there's a retroactive piece in there, which I was fascinated by. It seems like a really amnesty. Tell me about that, and how long that's going to last.
Well, I'm gonna have to go back to the bill myself and take a look at it. You're talking about in 4210. There is a retroactivity clause.
Yes.
I'm not
Well,
recalling the practical effect of that.
Don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. Just let it lie there.
Erase the tape. Erase the tape.
Back it up.
It seemed to be very. Say anyone that has been hurt, punished in any way because of the silliness by which this act has been destroying them, aggrieved, you get some relief here. But don't tell them if that's the way that I'm reading it. I could be reading it wrong. Assume that that's the case. But now the other bill, of course, 4209, is its own new entity that's really being created. It's its own regulatory. It does not amend the Michigan Medical Marijuana. It creates its own regulatory scheme or set of laws that manage this new industry that is no connection whatsoever to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, other than people that are patients can go there and purchase cannabis. Am I right?
Right. I mean, that's how many of the lawyers at the House of Representatives are looking at this issue. They've presented it as not an amendment to the MMMA. Now, I've heard other people argue that, well, of course, this is an amendment to the MMMA, and look at how it connects with, in a practical way, so many of the elements of the MMMA. So I don't know if that's going to be challenged later, but that's been the understanding that folks have been operating under, is that 4209 does not amend the MMMA. It just creates a parallel system of regulation and licensure and protections from the criminal sanctions that might otherwise be attached to trading in cannabis.
Let me ask you this, and I know you're an attorney and you're well versed in the legislative process as well from your experience. What is the and you mentioned you've discussed this before, but the legislature can't create taxes, right? Doesn't there have to be a constitutional amendment of some kind in order to create a taxing mechanism? And is that something that and that was something that came out of the Reagan era, if I'm correct? And does any of what I'm saying make sense? I mean, you can't just in a city can't create a tax on something without a constitutional amendment, state constitutional amendment.
Well, nothing is quite that simple, right? So first off, I'm not an attorney. I should mention that. But I do like to read and try to figure these things out. And my understanding of the state of the law with respect to the tax law in the state of Michigan is that because of the combination of the Tisch Amendment and the Headley Amendment, which was passed back in the 70s, and I think this is actually a practical effect of the Tisch Amendment, if I'm correct on my history, property taxes can't be raised without the vote of the people, and local units in Michigan only have the authority to levy property taxes. Local units can't tax gasoline or sports entertainment venue tickets or income, except in very limited circumstances, et cetera, right? But the state government has the authority to levy taxes against business profits, against income, and none of that is affected by that constitutional prohibition. So the legislature could meet next week, and we could raise the income tax from 4.25 to 4.35, and that would be completely legal. However, any property tax assessments are limited to only being levied when they're approved by the voters in that jurisdiction. So that's my understanding of how that works. It sort of creates this sense that all taxes have to be voter approved, but it's that stricture really only applies to the local government because the state levies taxes that are in areas outside of the scope of sort of influence of that constitutional amendment. That's my understanding.
If I may add one more thing on the Headley Amendment, which you add, it limits the annual increase in property taxes to 5% or market value, which is ever lower. So that's got like an inflation thing protected in, so that people aren't priced out of their house by a rapidly rising area.
Yeah, that was the idea behind it. Yep.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Robert. What does this really look like on the other side? Tell our listeners, and a lot of people are interested. A lot of caregivers, I think, are seemingly disappointed. They thought that they were going to be able to maintain a certain posture as a caregiver and participate and not have to make a choice. What kind of opportunities do you think will really be available to the and who is going to control those decisions? I mean, obviously the law there's got to be a local city willing to provide the way in to, and then the next stage would be to the state. How many do you think are really going to be available, and what do you see this looking like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think obviously when we're looking at the bills that pass the House and trying to identify all the ways in which the bills fell short, the caregiver piece is the deficiency in the system, or it's the key one. And interestingly, many members of the legislature wanted to fix that issue in the way I did, which was to provide a legal path for these caregivers to get their overages into the legal market. But there was also a large number of legislators who wanted to just eliminate caregivers entirely. So the fact that the bill doesn't really deal with the caregiver question is, I suppose, a double-edged sword. Now, I think that what the caregivers are focused on right now is that the bills make it clear that, of course, if they pass by the Senate and are signed by the governors, the bills make it clear that these new dispensaries that will be licensed won't be able to buy any overages from caregivers unless caregivers go and get a license. And there are layers of complication to getting the license, and some of those layers are still unseen because they're going to be determined by the State Department when this bill, or if this package of bills passes. So what we know now is that if anyone wants to get any of these licenses, whether it's a cultivator license, a processor license, a secure transport license, or a retail dispensary license, in any of those cases, one of the strictures is definitely going to be that the LARA has to know that your local unit of government has set up an ordinance and that they've authorized your application. So certainly you're going to have a stamp of approval from your local government. You're also going to have to meet a series of requirements that they set up, and many of them are outlined in the bill. I'm not looking at it right now. You can read it for yourself, but there are many requirements about what kind of information you have to submit, prohibitions on people who have certain crimes within a certain period of time, and then it also says that LARA is going to have broad authority to set other rules to stipulate what sort of safety and security measures you're going to have to take, what measures you're taking to ensure that you're complying with all the other elements of the law around record keeping and whatever rules that they devise around the medibles as well. And I think that's going to be one of the big questions, is that how is the department and this new cannabis control board that's going to be seated, what kind of rules are they going to think up? Are they going to mostly stick to the sorts of things we're talking about now, or are they going to get really detailed about things like medibles? I mean, one of the big concerns that I hear time and time again in Lansing is about medibles that are shaped or marketed to children, and so I suspect that will be a core concern of LARA. They're going to want to know what kind of packaging people are using and what kind of childproof containers people are using and things like that. So those are some of the things we know right now, but I think that until the Senate passes it and the governor signs it and the department starts to meet and these control board members start to be impaneled, it's going to be a bit of a question mark in terms of how fine grain they're going to get with their system.
And that's there's a lot of what ifs still, because the ultimate, I think, direction is going to be by this panel or this board of overseers as they've described them.
Well, that's how it's going to evolve. Yeah, that's how it's going to evolve over time. But there are some strictures you can see right in the bill. Yeah.
What is your confidence level of this thing rolling out anytime soon with the administration, current administration, in terms of its? Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's moving pretty quick now that it's gotten to this particular point. It seems, assuming it passes in a reasonable time, do you see this phase of, creating a board, having people in place to make these decisions and hand out the licenses, a smooth process, or do you think the state is going to have problems with implementing it?
It's a good question. I haven't thought a lot about, what kinds of hiccups that the administration might have in dealing with what is, clearly a new item to them, and what, obviously the state has struggled with in the past 7 years since the Medical Marijuana Act was passed, right? I mean, how long did it take the state to set up the new conditions board, right? I mean, it actually required the legislature to wag its finger at the department in order to, legislatively with a statutory change in order to get the department to actually panel that group. But I suspect that because there is money and revenue involved in this whole structure, that there's going to be a lot of interest in moving this forward, right? I mean, what we're hearing right now is a real clamoring from our local governments and our cities and our townships saying, we got to figure this out. And there's going to be some communities that are going to be ready to go right away with ordinances already made up. We see what's happening in Detroit right now. We know that there's a number of communities that have been operating just fine with dispensaries within their borders. So I suspect that there'll be a real push from those communities to say, well, look, we've already got it figured out. We've already got an ordinance. Where's the green light? Because, we're ready to collect these license fees. We're ready to, start getting a piece of that excise tax revenue. Because if you look at the way that the revenue is split, local governments, are going to be enticed into approving these types of facilities and figuring it out. Also, there's a lot of folks, those of you who've been around the Capitol know that there's a lot of folks who are interested in the business opportunities around these types of licenses. And I think that those folks are going to be pushing pretty heavily on the governor and his team. And I think that, those folks have the resources to, get the government's attention. Obviously, there are legal efforts that can be undertaken to force that kind of action, force compliance with the law. But I think that ultimately the carrot of revenue will encourage the state to move along.
Rep. Irwin, if you would help me with a point of procedure. The other day in the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Casto called for a vote on the bills prior to allowing citizen testimony on that. Now, I'm sure that he didn't violate any rules or any kind, but how frequently does that happen?
Very infrequently. Usually if an issue is controversial enough or generates enough interest to get a large number of public comment seekers, then usually the committee deals with that first. And I don't think I've ever seen that before in my, 5 years now or 4.5 years.
We saw it once.
I was surprised by that. I figured, honestly, when we moved forward to vote on that, I figured he was just going to cut it off and say, sorry, there's no time for your testimony, and I've heard enough from you people, right? But when he called everybody up afterwards, I thought, well, it's better that people get their chance to speak than not at all, perhaps, particularly folks who've driven a long distance. I have, though, seen situations where the chairperson has just refused to let any public comment happen, and that has not been all that uncommon, actually, because I've seen chair people come in and say, look, we're voting right now. We took testimony last week. Everybody had their chance last week to talk, and now we're going.
We did see that in Senator Jones's committee when he was chairman of the Judiciary back in 2011. He did that to us.
And we saw it at the
Senate Judiciary,
the new conditions panel for autism.
Very true too. Yes.
So it's just been happening to us constantly.
Yeah. Well, it's people do mean things to our community. That's just what happens. Well, thanks for clearing up that point of procedure. I was kind of concerned that was abnormal, and I appreciate you confirming that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and you're not alone in that experience. There are a lot of other groups that are stymied by legislators who don't want to hear what they have to say. I mean, our legislature has been particularly hard on on the social safety net recently, and when you've got a large number of people who are coming to the legislature saying, why did you cut food stamps? That's all federal money anyway. What were you thinking?
Right.
They're happy to shut down those kinds of voices as well. So, you're not alone. You've got a lot of company in frustration with the way that the legislature can sometimes just roll things through so quickly and seemingly without any regard for process or the public voice. And then other times, issues just linger and linger, and it seems like there's never any action in interminable hearings on the same issues over and over again. So that's, I guess, part of the fun of the sausage making process.
The fun of the sausage making process. Quote of the night.
Well, that's actually a reference to a saying that people who find the law interesting and light, and also those who like hot dogs, should not watch either being made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it has been a bit of a queasy thing to observe and to participate in over the years. But you've been a staunch ally of ours, Representative Irwin, and I know the Planet Green Trees staff and all the people in the studio here give you a hearty high five for everything you've done.
Let me ask you something.
Well, I
you mentioned that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, but the biggest queasy thing I think we all have is as these bills go over to the Senate, and Senator Jones has made it clear that he's going to hold up the law enforcement view of these items. And, hopefully these bills aren't going to get any worse, because there was really many compromises meant to satisfy the irrational fears of the law enforcement community. And one of the things that's most frustrating to me is that, particularly when you talk about the caregiver issue, I kept trying to argue, look, let's find a way to get these people plugged in. If we're going to make them jump through a couple hoops even, let's find some sort of way to compromise and get these caregivers a path into the legal market, because we know what's going to happen if there isn't that path. And law enforcement kept arguing that it was a public safety priority to keep the caregivers out of the system, because having the caregivers in the system was going to generate more marijuana for the black market. And that just, I don't know, it makes no sense to me that they would make the argument that allowing this product that's going to be produced and going to be sold and going to be consumed, that allowing it into the legal market is somehow worse than pushing it back into the illegal market. And that was the most frustrating part of the process for me, that law enforcement and my argument were essentially the same argument, but taking completely opposite positions. I'm pretty certain that one of us is right and one of us is wrong about this point regarding what's in the best interest of public safety. Bring the caregivers into the legal market or push them into the illegal market. And it was, our law enforcement officials arguing to push them into the illegal market, I thought was irresponsible, and it was disappointing to see them win on that particular point. Hopefully, Senator Jones doesn't assure that they take additional steps towards criminalizing behavior that we know is going to occur and isn't harming anyone.
That's why I ask, and you said it would make sense and it would flow in a open market where those that are participating have been accepted. There's existing ordinances that would be an easy step, since the city's already opted in, so to speak, and now they want to authorize a state license through their local community. Are those licenses for those people that are currently existing, or are they for people that have not already been in play? Is there any benefit that will be allowed or foreseen possibly for those who have found themselves safely tolerated, so to speak, or operational in communities where it's not a big deal anymore? And there's a few,
on the retail
as we
side,
know.
right?
On the retail side, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing that explicitly speaks to that in the legislation, except to say that the state is going to expect to get them licensed, right? So if the state isn't enforcing against them and prosecuting them now, there's no reason to think that they all of a sudden would, in light of the passage of this bill. You would assume that the state would take steps to effectuate that change as quickly as possible. But of course, all of this is in a legal gray area, and that's part of the impetus to trying to find some sort of compromise on these bills. Both for patients and caregivers that are relying upon concentrates and extracts and oils of various kinds, and for the folks who have stuck their neck out to, provide medicine through some sort of retail outlet here in the state of Michigan. Those folks are all taking a risk right now, And one of the good parts about trying to reach a compromise on this idea is to clarify what is legal and what is not, so that folks can, if they choose to, stay on the legal side of the line. So my hope is that there'll be no effect to those folks, although in reality their position is no more or less precarious today than it was tomorrow or yesterday.
I mean, you've been, involved in this from the very beginning. You know how the community itself had struggled with this kind of way back when. And there's some bills that were originally introduced, and there was always that issue of whether they were going to include a grow associated with the retail versus not having that and allowing the existing caregiver system. And the medical cannabis community fought about that, and you remember there's a whole, and as the bills were originally 2012 and 13 that did not happen, and then we, look where they are now. It's a complete opposite side of it with some, as you said, intention to cut out the caregiver. And really, first of all, who would have known that the state would have this much interest in the business of marijuana 5 years ago? You know what I mean? Now they are all in like mad.
They
right?
see a revenue stream.
Well, obviously, but it wasn't that way before.
No, they said they wanted nothing to do with it before.
And
a lot has changed. Public opinion has changed a lot, and these bills have dramatically changed. You're right. But the discussion that was being pushed by certainly members of the law enforcement community was just to simply cut out the caregivers entirely and to amend the MMA to completely eliminate their opportunity to grow medicine for their patients. And that was a loud voice, not just from that community, but from some legislators who thought, look, this is just chaotic and messy. Let's get some control over this. And so, as far as I'm concerned, that's a recipe for I was going to say disaster, but that's probably being a little overboard. It's just a recipe for driving people back into the shadows, and I don't want that. I want to normalize this, bring it into the light, get it happening in a reputable way.
See the rejection of your position as non-compromise. Like there's no compromise there. Like the whole idea here is that we're trying to let these individuals who are participating now, this is the system now, the unregulated system organically developed, they can't ignore that. And
they don't want it. They're not going to ignore it. They want to eliminate it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The other side of it is, as they are, rejecting that as a concept, intentionally pushing legislation with their awesome power as police officers, I'm still not sure how they do that, they've also, the revenue driven from it is to create more jobs for them to arrest more people or prosecute.
The Michigan State
that
Police
is so awesome. How does it get like that? That is some of the most awesome politicking. I know it's just such a force. It really is. Like it's. What do you say? Has it ever been like this before in the history of politics in Michigan, where the law enforcement community was so influential without any real authority to do so, but actually directing?
I think the law enforcement community has always been very influential, and that I don't think that's inappropriate, right? That I think a lot of us have a reverence and respect for people who do that job. At least I certainly do. I think the problem that we're experiencing now, I don't know how this fits into the context of Michigan history, but I don't suspect this is a new problem, is that the people who elevate to the positions of leadership in these organizations, tend to be the ones who are the most gung-ho and who are the most bought into the program. And so now when those folks become leaders and the justification for so much of their work is crumbling underneath them as people are rejecting the drug war, they're frustrated with that change and with that, it takes away their validation and all of that, right? And so I think that's very frustrating for them. It's very unsettling. This change it doesn't line up with how their career has been focused. And I don't think it's surprising that they take the posture that they do, because they've built up a career on this war on drugs, and so it's hard for them to take a different view. But I think that there's a lot of officers on the street who see this very similarly to the way many of us do, which is that sure, there is drug abuse that's problematic in our community, but let's address that as a public health and a mental health concern, and let's stop treating it as a criminal concern. And and all of the problems that we see with drug abuse and addiction, they're not going to go away, but they're going to be diminished. And we're also going to diminish our problems with violence being driven by the illegal trade in drugs. And ending this drug war isn't going to once again solve all our problems. I think most frontline officers know that it's going to reduce those problems, right? I mean, they've watched The Wire, and they've lived that, and so they know, right? But anyway, why are they influential? I think they're influential for some good reasons. I think people have respect for the police for a lot of good reasons, and I also think that there's a lot of politicians who really want to be able to send out that brochure with them standing there surrounded by men and women in the blue uniforms, and they want to project themselves as being with the police because the police have a lot of respect with the public. So that's, I think, what this is about. It's about politics, but it's also about genuine respect.
Well, I understand all that it is politics. You did mention along the way, there's this like irrational hanging on dinosaur. It's almost about to be extinct, so we're going to crybaby our way and get our way, blah, blah, blah. I get that that's part of it.
We see that in everything, right? We see that in the road building world, too. All these engineers from the 50s want to build these wide roads with no trees. And now all of us, young urban planners are saying, no, make the roads narrower. It'll be safer that way. Put in bike paths. And so, we change is hard.
Understood. And I
roundabouts. What do people think about roundabouts? Do you like roundabouts?
I love roundabouts. I love them. They're so much fun.
What about back-to-back?
I love them too. I think they're great. Some people hate them.
Right.
That's right.
I love them, and I know they work. They work. They work better.
I've never gotten into an accident. I've never seen an accident.
They reduce accidents, but some people just hate them.
Yeah. What do you think, Alan? What do you think about those roundabouts?
People hate the construction of the roundabout, which can mess up the interchange for maybe more than a year, and it causes more problems than it's worth, like a 14-mile road and Orchard Lake Road.
You sound better. Well, Rep. Irwin, I just have to personally thank you for all your advocacy, and I know that we had spoken on some of the issues that you took to bat for 4210, and I think I've been trying to tell people, they're three bills, they're three distinct bills, and 4210 at the current state, I think it's a good bill, and I think it's going to keep people out of jail.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate all your advocacy. I've told you many times I think your work has been very effective on this. And, 4210, I think, is the best of the three bills because, frankly, that's the one that required a three-quarters majority, right? And so that's the bill that Democrats are the ones leverage on. And we were able to, I think, get more good stuff in and more bad stuff out of there.
Yeah, I think it's solid, and I think it's just going to clarify the law and really protect people. We do have a question actually about the weight equivalence. Michael, do you want to? It's a burning question. I think we should. I think
you ask it.
I think this is a good question. So, Representative Irwin, in the weight equivalence in 4210, there's three categories. One is solid, one is liquid, and one is gaseous. Mm-hmm. What is a gaseous form of cannabis?
I have no idea. I have no idea, but if it's out there, I'm sure that you'll let me know soon.
Should we rely on this as legislative intent right now?
Maybe they'll
when we argue this later on, this is what this is called, legislative intent.
Maybe it might be like
the answer. I have no idea.
Well, yeah.
You could sell it like
I defer to Jim Powers. How's that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to play out in court. I know I've heard a couple different interpretations of it.
Do you think? I mean, there's some language that seems to be significantly re-emphasizing or stating that this law is intended to protect.
It is.
And
the shield, right?
The shield.
It's supposed to be.
But so these measurements and weights are intended to create categories which these other products fall into,
mm-hmm.
and then if you measure those things because they weren't labeled before, there wasn't a category, then those persons should be protected from arrest, prosecution, like they would anything else.
Right.
So that's the intention of this. But I'm just worried. Do you think that was there concerns about the wax and the concentrates as a public safety issue and creating these things to create, arrests, or do you think it was more intended to create protections? Rep. Irwin.
Well, I'm not sure if it was intended to create either of those. I guess, if I had to try to channel the arguments of the various law enforcement groups that were weighing in, I think their concern was that, someone could be transporting some amazing amounts, and that, this would be used as a shield to protect someone who, clearly wasn't just helping their patients, but had so much that it was beyond the pale. And I think that these numbers that we arrived at, I'm sure that they're not the right numbers, but there was a lot of back and forth about where exactly they should be and whether they should be higher or lower. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to the 7 grams of marijuana-infused product if in a gaseous form, because I didn't really think that number was particularly important. But are they talking about vapor or something? Or
I don't know.
When you think about the fact that the average person's going to use about 80 cubic feet of air when they're breathing normally in an hour, and how much that weighs, and you do the math, and then you can...
I don't think that's what it is. I think the interpretation...
Is that pure gas, or is that gas?
I don't think it's gas.
Oxygen.
Puffers.
Just kidding.
I think that they're trying to refer to extracts and concentrates.
Yeah, but when they say gas,
no,
7 grams is not very much in gas.
No, but in a puffer, the substance in question isn't a gaseous form. I mean, that's the way it's administered, is through a gaseous application. Yeah. So it's the only medical application of a product that fits the description. And there are products on the market that have that characteristic in limited numbers in Colorado and California.
Well, I hope so.
And of course that simulates some of the other sprayed aerosols like Marinol and things of that nature too. Although it's a bit of a different application.
It's just a huge difference, right? Because a very sick individual, I mean, my son, for instance, he uses a very small amount of cannabis, really, at the end of the day. He utilizes about 10 grams of oil a month. But some of these kids that we work with, especially the ones with really very serious brain cancers, consume 3 grams a day. And to say that they could only have a small amount would be bad. So to allow them to have the full 2.5 ounces of extract is just very important to make sure that they can, maintain their dose and continue their therapy uninterrupted.
But the quantity of cannabis
I can't tell you how many times I brought up Costco.
Costco?
I'm sorry, Rick. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Rick. But I was saying, or speak over here. I was saying I can't tell you how many times I brought up Costco on the or Sam's Club on the floor, when talking about these various weights. Whenever someone would say, "Isn't that a lot? Isn't that way too much?" I would say, "Well, where do you buy your paper towel?"
Right.
Sometimes,
right.
Particularly like you're saying, Jim, if somebody is they're very sick, they know that they're going to be using 1 gram or 3 grams a day. What are you just going to go buy a couple days worth of medicine every day? That doesn't make any sense. That's not how people shop for things. That's not how people use their time efficiently. So people need to be able to have an amount that will carry them through. Of course, that's what the MMA says in it, but now we've got these very specific amounts. I'm not thrilled about it, but here we are.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and hopefully it doesn't change. I'm as you know, I'm very concerned about what will happen in the Senate Judiciary, and I hope that Senator Jones doesn't tighten the bills down, to use his phraseology, too hard, and that they come out somewhat intact, because I know that there's a couple other amendments that may be offered that the community may not like.
Rep. Irwin, if you'd like to give us some more if you'd like to give us some more of your time, we're more than welcome to do that. But if you have to go, we would understand.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut it short here soon, but let me just say a couple of things. One is that we're all, I think, worried about what's going to happen in the Senate. If these bills are horribly deformed in the Senate, it's going to be a big challenge to then kill them in the House, but maybe possible. And I just want to specifically mention that when I was talking to a lot of my colleagues about this issue and about why it was so important to eliminate that tax, or at least reduce it quite a bit, was citing the kinds of numbers that you were just talking about, Jim Powers, which is that, here are the types of dosages that some of these patients are using. And if you've got someone who's say, for instance, a brain cancer patient, they're going to be using a fair volume. And I was just using the figure of 1 gram a day and adding that up over the course of a month or a year based on the types of prices that we see in Michigan for these oils. And using pretty conservative dosage and pretty conservative pricing, I was able to explain to my colleagues why an 8% tax would be really onerous for a family that was spending that kind of money on medicine to keep their child particularly present and alive in the world that we're living in. And so I think it's really important that patients and everybody who cares about this issue, make that point to the Senate that, look, this tax, if you're going to amend this tax, you should be amending it to 0, not back up to 8%. Because if you got a family that's spending $15,000 to $20,000 a year on medicine that their child needs or that they need, and the insurance that paying one dime for, we shouldn't be taxing that. That's rough. Many of these people are on disability. These people are living on a shoestring budget. And we're basically telling them that if they want to become a zombie and sign up for the official program, that the taxpayers will be happy to foot the bill for those types of drugs. But if they get better relief with less side effects from a non-toxic substance, we're pushing that away from them by making it very expensive, wrapping it in red tape, and now adding a tax to it. So I hope that we can push back on the Senate a little bit and tell them not that, please don't destroy these bills, but hey, maybe you can even make them better. Because, you're conservatives, you talk about how you want less regulation and low tax because, that's important to keep the engine of commerce moving. How about in this case where we've got people who are spending $15,000, $20,000, maybe even more a year on medicine, and now you're talking about tacking 3% on to pay for the weed cops who are going to run around and look at people's grows? This is not good. It's not a good idea. And it's not in the public interest. It doesn't create any value for the world, right? No one is getting a new good or service that is being produced by this drag on our system. So, I know that all these elements have been added to, satisfy certain elements that aren't keen on this industry moving forward, but we need to push hard in the Senate to make these bills even better, to get rid of this tax. I think that's the best way to ensure that the bills get out of the Senate without being impaired.
Jeff, just before we let you go, I want to say that we just received a text message from one of the listeners who says, Jeff Irwin helps restore my faith in representative government. I'm going to make another donation to MI Legalize in his honor.
All right.
Applause. That's great.
Well done.
Representative Irwin, true story. Thank you so much for your appearance again on Planet Green Trees.
Well, hold on. Steve Green wants to ask a question from his special...
Steve Green.
Is that right? No? Yes? No?
I thought you wanted to talk about it.
Oh, maybe talk about it afterwards. Well, Steve... Jump in, Steve.
Well, are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm sure here.
Hey, there you are. So, I did not directly have a question for Rep. Irwin, although I do have a question in general. Maybe Rep. Irwin can help answer it. I missed any question about what 1 gram of wax equals. What does 1 gram of wax equal under this bill package?
1 gram of marijuana.
So,
I'm confused about the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What does 1 gram of wax equal?
Correct. It's a concentrate. Wax is a concentrate. It is a butane extraction. We're talking about BHO or something like this, or RSO. It could be the same thing. So, 1 gram of this concentrate is still equal to 1 gram of usable marijuana under the new terms and definitions in this package of bills. Yes.
That sounds right, but I'm sensing that I might be putting my foot into a trap here because that's a legal question. The question you're asking, if I understand it, is in the MMMA, it says you can possess a certain amount of usable marijuana, quote unquote.
Correct.
Now, in this amendment in 4210, we are amending the definition of usable marijuana to include these extracts, including BHO. And your question basically is, are those same weights inured to the concentrates as they are to the usable marijuana in the original MMMA.
Correct.
My only concern would be that in the on page, what page is this? Page 7 of the final bill passed, there's this language that we were just talking about, which is on line 25, section 3, subsection C, it says, hold on, I just lost it. It says, for the purposes of determining usable marijuana equivalency, the following shall be considered equivalent to 1 ounce. Okay, so it says 1 ounce of usable marijuana. It says 16 ounces of marijuana-infused product if in a solid form, 7 grams of marijuana and it's used in a gaseous form, or 36 fluid ounces of if it's in a liquid form. So I would think that wax would be a solid form, but I can also see.
Point.
Yeah, that's what I would think. So I would think it would fall under Section 3, subsection C1.
That means we could have like. That means we could have like 40 ounces.
That's legislative intent right here. But of course, it's a solid.
That's what I think, right? Because that's what my.
I don't like your interpretation. That's the.
Well, certainly. Hold on.
It's true.
Certainly, the wax that we've referred to, the oil, the Simpson oils, are not
liquid or gaseous.
To fall into the definition of gases,
right?
Gaseous
or
liquid.
The usable marijuana, and this is, I know something that this is how the bill started. It's redefined. So they redefined it. They include plant resin and extract. And I believe that because they put that in there, that plant resin and extract would be considered usable marijuana because it's defined as usable marijuana.
Right.
And you're allowed 2.5 ounces of usable marijuana.
Right.
And I don't see anywhere else that it would define it any other way.
Yeah. But let me just say, I must be really missing something or ignorant on this gaseous point of only allowing 7 grams, because when you look at the average person breathes the equivalent of about 3 pounds of air in an hour.
Yeah, what falls in that category?
So I just don't understand how, 3 pounds, that's like
inhaling.
1,300 grams.
If you inhale it,
so
whatever it is, if you inhale it, you've committed a crime. That's what it is. Because it automatically ingests more than 7 grams of that gas from it. That's what it is. It's like it's the final trap.
But it must be
the final trap.
It must be incredibly diluted at that point when it's used, because it just doesn't seem like very much.
I don't understand how this gaseous piece is going to work at all. Maybe, I thought I knew a lot about the subject, but maybe not.
7 grams of gas is not very much.
No, it's not. But I would trust Mr. Camoran's interpretation of this weight issue before I would trust mine. Because
Mr. Camoran has refused to advise us in any way, shape, or form in this matter.
I want to wait until there's some final before I offer an opinion. Let it be finalized.
What do you think, Alan? Can we get your?
I just don't see how 7 grams in gaseous form is.
But what is gaseous form, attorney?
There's 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah, I like that.
All right. So gas is
and that's my point. Wax, oil
solid,
is not gas.
Right.
Those are other things. Gas is something you can't hold on to.
But can the substance
or contain?
Can it exist in both sections? Can it exist in the usable marijuana section?
This is what I said before. The smoking of marijuana, the ingestion of smoke right now, is illegal based on the way it's being interpreted. It's not listed as one of the things defined in usable material. This is like almost the, this is because the ingestion of these things becomes a gas. Is that what it is? And then you're
So you're only allowed a little bit, but
you can have a little tiny
I don't
puff.
get it.
It's got to be a little
understand.
puff, no deep hits.
I like Representative Irwin's interpretation better than mine, though. I think that's what I'm going to go with.
Which is what? There's no such thing as a gaseous thing.
That wax and extracts are solids.
Okay, right.
And then I'm allowed 16 ounces times 2.5.
And how about this? Of all the existing things that we know about that could be ingested, we do not know of one. Could we identify one that would fall in the category of gases?
No. Well, Rick has. Rick says there's stuff in Colorado, but this is Michigan, so.
Maybe
guess we're not that advanced.
there's some sort of fear that dispensaries will start selling. Here's a balloon, right? Here's a balloon full of marijuana-infused vapor, and I don't know. I mean, that's the only thing I can imagine. And I guess I didn't get very concerned about this language because I thought, how could that possibly apply to anybody? I mean, unless during some sort of bust they're going to come and put a plastic bag over somebody's head before they exhale or something. It just doesn't make any sense. So I mean, I don't understand how this could be really a trap for anybody in a practical sense.
Because nothing falls into that category that we can think of. I mean, everything else that we were concerned about, that is meaningful to patients, the children, those that are not smoking, all of those things that would not fall into that category. We're pretty solid on that. Solid, get it? And it's certainly not gases on
not
that.
liquid.
Right. That was my point. I just wanted to. It was just a point of concern because we've seen things twisted to the worst possible interpretation.
Sure, and you don't have to be a scientist to be a judge, but I can't imagine how that's a gaseous form. As far as I'm concerned, all of these waxes and oils are a solid form, unless they want to try to argue that they're liquid. I mean, at what point does something become, I guess, viscous enough to be a liquid? I'm not sure exactly. But
I mean, if they want to argue it's a liquid, then we're allowed 36 ounces times 2.5.
Well, right,
but
exactly.
Here's the information right off the internet for the product Advair, which is an inhalant product with a puffer. That dosage is 45 micrograms per puff. So if you have a 45 microgram per puff, and you're allowed 7 grams,
that's a lot.
That's a good amount of. But that's
15,
exactly what they're referring to.
All right,
that's
very good.
a very generous amount, but
we have solved the mystery.
Yeah, 45 micrograms.
Attorney
per dose.
Camoran looks like he just had a epiphany, but he's not going to share it with us.
All right. Let's let the measurement. I got to work on those measures. I got to figure out what those mean. All right. So you've been more than indulgent. Thank you so much for the.
Thank you, Rob, for
all your support.
Hey, everyone,
my pleasure.
Yay!
I'll look forward to chatting with you all again, and I hope everybody's got a few petitions that they carry around with them, so that when they go to the local coffee shop or the bar or wherever you go, that you can say, "Hey, have you signed the petition to legalize marijuana? You want to see this on the ballot next year? Let's make it happen."
Right. My petition just has a sign on the other side. It says, "Sign the petition, end prohibition." I just walk and show it to people. They'll sign it.
That's right.
Yep. You can get a lot just that kind of every day walking around without a whole ton of effort, and we need all the help we can get to get that over the line.
It's like fish in a barrel.
Have a great evening.
You too. Good night.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that was a lot of fun, and I think we all have a much better understanding of what these bills do and what they're about.
And how big a dick Kesto is?
He really didn't do us any real favors, did he? And I am really anxious to see what happens in the Senate Judiciary. I think that it is going to get interesting. Jamie looks really excited.
Steve Green, what's your take on all this?
What is your take, Mr. Green?
My take on this package of bills?
On the whole shit show, man.
Well, my take is, I guess it's various and sundry. I mean, I'm happy, obviously, about 4210. I'm on board with you guys. I don't have anything bad to say about 4210. I think 4209 is a mixed bag of goods, but I think in the longer term, the broader scheme of things, wouldn't you agree with me that if we pass MI legalized, much of this doesn't matter anymore?
That's right.
Yes, it will all be moved.
Yes, but that's not really a direct answer to the question.
But we still
because the intention of these beyond that, we want to believe we don't want to believe, but it would seem to be that it's an attempt to get ahead of the legalization and create some kind of infrastructure that's owned, dominated.
It's not that we believe it; they've stated that
there you go.
In the media several times.
There you go. So it's like a preemptive strike against
creating the framework.
The constitutional exercising right of the initiative process.
There's a trigger in 4209 for recreational. I think that says it all.
What's the trigger? What's the trigger?
The trigger is when recreational hits, the tax goes up to like some exorbitant number. I don't remember what it was. It was like 16% or something.
Is it listed in there?
Huh? I don't know. Let's take a look here.
Well, I mean, that's not a thing you just throw out there loosely.
No, I thought that the 3% tax on medical went away when recreational was passed. So,
is that it?
Yep. However, it's going to be a heinous tax on the rec market.
That's what I'm saying.
And the advantage of MI Legalize is that it sets up a parallel system, so that people can opt to use either the legal system or the medical system. And the medical system would be so disadvantageous at that point.
In other words, this system will slide right in and attempt to.
So here's the thing, right? Like, and I personally don't like the tax. I don't like the secured transport. And the reason I don't like any of that is because it's going to drive the price of medicine up for patients. But that being said, like our group, and I say this all the time, that's my personal opinion. Our group, Michigan Parents for Compassion, has a very different opinion, and that is that creating a new avenue of safe access is a good thing. So that's the other side of this equation. Is it worth it? And I don't know if it is or not. And I think what's going to end up happening is bills are going to be changed dramatically in the Senate, dramatically. And some of the stuff that Rep. Irwin was talking about with the caregiver system, you can expect that people are still going to be lobbying for it in the Senate. And they know they have a friend in Senator Jones. So it's very, very important that if you are a constituent of Senator Jones, Senator Tori Roca, Senator Tanya Schumacher, or Senator Steve Beda, that you contact your senator immediately and let them know exactly where you stand on this issue, because they are holding all of the cards at this point, and if we're going to influence their decision, it has to happen right now.
And Beda's division, his district, covers a lot of Macomb County. So if you're on the east side, make sure that you take a look if you don't know who your senator is already. We've seen in media quotes both Rick Jones saying that he still has sheriffs and police chiefs to satisfy on these bills, that they're not ready for it yet. And yet we see Carlton in the House saying, I took everybody's interest into consideration when we drafted this, so they're all set. Again, we've got the police officers' unions and the police chiefs' unions playing the House versus the Senate. They get the House to sacrifice everything under the guise that this is all that's ever going to be asked of them for the bill. And then when that's done, they go to the Senate and say, now give us deeper cuts. And as Jim mentioned, Senator Rick Jones is a big-time fan of law enforcement, former member of law enforcement as a sheriff.
Former Eden County sheriff.
So, and this is his last session, too, by the way. There's a sense sometimes, too, when you're in your last session that you want to make a statement going out. And it would be Rick Jones's pleasure to say, I tamed those potheads on my way out of office by creating a system where they can't succeed.
I'm sure that, and what's that? Yeah, let's get someone on the line.
Love it.
So, I mean, everybody, Rick Jones is definitely